We're live. Hello, good morning, everybody.
I refuse
Uh,
to believe you.
Welcome into Morning Ritual. Know that we are actually live.
Mm,
There are people on the internet that are watching us right now.
I don't believe that either. Good morning.
Horrifying concept.
I know, right? I do these shows pretending like it's just a Zoom call between friends, so eventually I'm gonna say something stupid. No. Good morning, everybody. I don't know what kind of energy I'm bringing to this. Um, I'm sorry, Anita. As you were, I'm
No, it's
just
good. This is Morning Ritual. This is our TTRPG talk show. And we've recently announced that we've been doing this for almost 100 episodes. 100 whole episodes. Whew. That's
Wow. What a
close to three
triumph.
years. Yeah, April 15th, Saturday, April 15th is going to be our 100th episode. Um, I'm very excited to see what we wind up coming up with because we've got a couple things in store for folks. I'm Anita. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm one of your hosts. And down here,
I'm Noir. My pronouns are he, they. I forgot what else I was
And
supposed to say.
but we've
I
got.
completely, I fully interpreted that pause as an invitation for me to talk.
Oh,
So
go
I'm
for
Yeah,
it.
so sorry
no,
for
We've got an
no.
amazing
interrupting
guest. Tell
You
folks about
you
yourself.
were saving me. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Connie. This is the earliest I've been awake. Not even just streaming, but awake in a hot minute. As my day job, I work 12 to 8.
Oh
So
my
this is
god.
early for me. But hi, I'm Connie. My pronouns are they, he, and she. You can find me across the internet at by Connie Chang. That's BYCONNICHANG. I'm probably best known as the game master and creative producer for Transplanar RPG, Sparkle Sparkle Sparkle,
Hey.
which is an all transgender POC-led dark fantasy TTRPG show set in an original non-colonial anti-orientalist multiverse. We're currently on our hiatus from our first main campaign, which was similarly over 100 episodes. I think it ended with like 120
Hey.
episodes or something.
Heck yeah.
Over 2.5 years in the making of a weekly stream. Ended with 8 players. It was such an
Eight
awesome send off.
players.
Yup. Yup, I was struggling for the final arc, but all fun stuff, all fun stuff. I believe my dramaturg Pi_Sharp is in chat tonight or today, this morning, chat this morning, and they were a huge help in being cat herding the 8 players. But yeah, we're on our hiatus right now, and we're coming back with the beginning of campaign 2, our next main campaign
Ooh.
on Pride Month this year. So the end of
Woo.
June, perhaps on our 3-year anniversary as a channel, we might have some fun, exciting news to share. But in the meantime, we've been streaming a ton of hiatus content. Yeah, that I'm excited to talk about. I'm sure during this segment,
Oh.
and I can also do an extended plug during after elections.
Oh yeah, no, we're going to talk about all the stuff that you do because holy crap, Transplanar has kind of taken the space by storm. I'm really kind of proud of seeing what you guys have done and put together. I've been a fan for a minute, and I'm kind of curious, like in a space where we have seen channels kind of come and go. What do you think is the key to Transplanar's longevity?
That's a great question, Nora, actually. I would say having having a great core team that treats it like a job. So when I first started Transplanar, it was kind of like we always kind of started with the knowledge that like this was going to be a kind of professional endeavor, that we wanted to make really good, high quality AP content, like from the jump. From the jump, we wanted to differentiate ourselves from a home game. Creatively in particular. In terms of production, and this was a bit naive of myself when I first started because I really didn't know how much work it was going to be. I told my 4 players at the time, which included C and Erica and Max, that hey, you know what? All I'm expecting from the 4 of you as players is for you to just show up every week and play. I'll take care of everything else. I was like, I'll take care of the product, I'll take care of everything else. And just the 4 of you can volunteer whatever work you want to volunteer, because we're going to start unpaid. We don't have an audience, nothing like that. But as we get money, we're going to just like split it among the 5 of us. So it ended up being a lot more work than I could handle. And C ended up basically over the course of like that first year coming on as kind of like a co-producer in a really organic way. I'd also come from a lot of like horizontal organizing when it came to like a lot of, you know, work in the nonprofit sector where people are like, let's not have bosses here. Everyone is everyone's boss, right? And this is something very common, I think, in particular grassroots community organizing spaces. And the reason why it works in a lot of those spaces is because people, I think, are very... I think any kind of horizontal leadership works when folks are both aware of their capacity and willing to actually volunteer labor. So if you have people who are not, you know, either one of those things are not clicking, it's not going to work out. So, which is why I think I was so resistant to the idea of a hierarchy to begin with, because I was like, well, I don't want to be like the boss. Like, there was a part of me that was like, I don't want to like have power over people. Like, that feels weird. I was like, that feels weird to me. But like, after 3 years in this space, there has to be a boss. By God, please, for the love of God, there needs to be a boss. You can be a good, you know, there needs to be someone who is in charge, who is a leader, who says, here's the when to meet, please fill it out. You know, here's the session 0 sheet, here's all the tools you need, here are all the docs, here's the OBS I'm gonna run, here are the marketing materials, here's the publicity, here are the sponsors for the stream. Like, you need someone who, multiple people ideally, who are like cranking the gears to get the channel to continue rolling. And as we expanded and as we started to get more sponsorship interest, as we started to expand our cast, especially as we started to gain more of a name in the space, it became more and more crucial to like actually kind of treat it in some ways, which feels so icky and weird as an artist, but in some ways as like a little bit of a business. Because without that, then you're kind of being an irresponsible channel runner. Like, there's something important to be said about like doing all those things so you can be show up it financially, production wise, and creatively for the people that are relying on you, i.e. your cast. So I would say one of like the big learning points was like transitioning into that like completely more professional way of running a show. And I think that is a big reason why Transplaner has been able to go on. It's because myself and C, we essentially treat Transplaner like honestly like a full-time job, and the amount of work it entails does require like the full-time job's commitment.
So that kind of leads me to my next question, which is as you gain a name in the space, I mean that's going to draw more attention to you, meaning that there's a chance, like I've seen this with other channels where people join for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. How do you protect your space but still allow yourself to be open and accessible?
So that's a really interesting. You're full of interesting questions this morning, Laura.
You're like,
Connie. You're like, slap, wake up, Connie. Like taking my brain and slapping it awake. Wow, I have to think critically at 11:20 a.m., which is not early comparatively, but it is for me. What I will say about that is, I think a lot of that depends on kind of like our working definition of like people joining for the wrong reasons, because I think there are many reasons why someone might join an actual play channel, and depending on the goals of the channel and the channel culture, a reason that is right for one channel might be wrong for another, right? So for Transplaner's channel in particular, we are kind of unique as a stream channel with a podcast companion in that we don't have like a bunch of different main shows, right? Like I know some channels out there are like, we have this on Tuesdays and we have this on Thursdays, right? And we have this show on Saturdays, and there are 3 different casts and all 3 shows have been going for like 6 months or something like that, right? We are unique in that we only have one main campaign series that typically, historically, has aired Saturdays at 8 p.m. US Eastern Time. And sometimes we also do like one-off one-shots. We'll do like charity streams, you know, we'll do like mini-series, especially if they usually come with some sort of like sponsored situation. Like we'll do like a 3-shot of perhaps a very fun modern 5e system that we did recently, right? So those are kind of the exceptions to our main campaign stream. And right now, during hiatus content, we're doing special mini series. We have a series of God Killer one shots coming up, which I'd love to talk about in a second.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
I
but
saw the
would
advertisements for those.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
excited.
super pumped for that. I'm super excited to talk about that during this segment actually. But I would say, so what sets us apart is that we do have a main campaign, and for that, we invite the cast on. We don't have open casting calls, which is also, I think, what makes us kind of unique. I know a lot of like channels like put out like a form, right? Or like for like a specific series, or for to be a channel regular or something like that. I think if that works for your channel, that's great, especially if you are the kind of you're running a channel that's open to the community, and like that's a big part of it. Like a community member could one day be like, oh, like I can be a player one day, or like I can be a guest GM one day, or something like that. And I think that's a great, if it works for you, it works for you. And I have a ton of my friends have like joined other channels that way. And I think there's definitely like really cool ways to make that work. Transplanter is different just because like I've been in theater spaces before where there's a whole audition thing and then callbacks, and that's just kind of not, I guess it's just personally kind of not the vibe of what we were trying to go with. It's important to us that we reach out to people that we want to collaborate with. So like we have a sort of like invitational sort of situation. And this also makes it so that like members of our community aren't like, oh, like I didn't get chosen, or like, oh, damn it, like I'm not cool enough to play on this. It's like, no. Like we love you as our audience member, right? And as our viewers and as our listeners. And there's a very clear differentiation between like cast and viewer. We're also very protective. And I would say we have strong and healthy boundaries around like parasociality too. Yeah. Like whenever like people start in the audience like start tweeting or like posting interesting reactions to our content, we, especially in our Discord server, I think we're usually pretty on top of being like, hey, like just as a friendly reminder, right? Like this show means a lot to us, and here are some appropriate ways to interact with our content in this particular space that we are curating.
That is so healthy and good.
Yeah,
and
I think it's very necessary. Yep, especially as you're starting to grow as an actual play channel. And a lot of it, depending on joining for quote unquote the wrong reasons, it just depends on why you're joining and what you hope to get out of the experience, and also what the channel is willing and able and interested in offering. And what we're willing, able, and interested in offering to our cast members, especially moving forward into our second main campaign, is a very creatively and performance forward enriching experience. We kind of treat actual play as an artistic venture, and a ripe avenue for storytelling, as opposed to like, this is a show, this is a business, or we're just a group of friends playing a game. Like we're moving away from those modes of thinking of actual play and toward like, this is acting, right? This is performance. This is an art form that we want to excel at, and this is the craft we enjoy playing. And to that extent, I think we're also makes us unique in the space.
I do have to say, like, having worked with your team behind the scenes, like business wise, I can't give full details of the story, but there was a scenario where I saw you step up to make sure that your cast got a fair piece of the pie, and that made me an instant fan. Like I was just like, this is what's up right here. So like, no, I have seen the actions to what you're saying, and you guys have been very impressive since day one, and I have been a huge fan. I do have to. Oh my goodness! I just realized I froze. One second. Don't perceive me. Okay.
You're back.
Okay, there we go. All right. So we got to see you on Dimension 20. So I kind of wanted to ask, how has that changed things for you? What are some things that you've enjoyed from that experience? What are some things that you kind of wish that you braced for before going in?
Oh, yeah, that was for context for some folks, I was on Adventuring Academy. The episode that we taped, aired on Dimension 20 sometime in October of last year. But I went to their studio in LA in August to record, and the entire experience was amazing. From like the initial reach out to like, the actual like in studio experience. It was my first time ever getting hair or makeup done outside of like whatever college productions I'd been in, right? That was really fun. The hair and makeup artist was super awesome. She was cool as hell. Brennan and the producers, the director, the crew was incredible. They were so sweet, made me feel so comfortable and like very included and like super natural and organic. Everyone at on the Dementia 20 like crew that I met was super, super cool. Just true, genuine spirits.
I have to ask, what's it like getting that email where it's just like, wait, what?
It was, so the hilarious thing about that is I had already, before getting the email, been planning to visit my sister in LA, because she lives and works in LA, and I was trying to nail down dates with her. I was like, oh, what about like, because I know it's your birthday, in August, but I was like, maybe I could come in August, we're like this second week, and then I got that email and they were like, are you available during this date in August? And I was like, that will be the day that I will be in town. So, yes.
What a coincidence.
So I was like, what a coincidence. Wow. I just happened to be in town during this week. So, I was already planning on trying to like reach out to some like cool folks who are maybe in chat that I got to meet up with. Hello, Alex. During that week, which was a ton of fun. I got to see my sister again, which was great. And yeah, like Brennan was such a joy to talk with. He is like, so before the tape session, there were we were eating tacos out in like the parking lot area, and I was like, getting my little taco, and then I wasn't ready. I was like, okay, like this is the producer, like this is the crew. I was like, hello, I'm Connie, like da-da-da. I was like starting to eat my taco, and then Brennan came out of nowhere. He was like, hi, Connie. I'm going to do something very intimidating right now for the first time of someone ever meeting me, which is to take out my tooth. And he sat down and he began to eat with us. And that was my first ever introduction to Brennan Lee Mulligan. That was the first thing he said to me. And, I wouldn't have had it any other way. He's hilarious. He's a great guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's like super amicable, and again, like one of the primary reasons, him and the crew, that I felt very welcomed on set. Which also leads me to something that I wish I was able to brace for more. I was super nervous. I was really, really, really nervous and really anxious. I wish I had done a little bit more work pre-show to like calm my nerves a bit, like in the car, do some breathing exercises or something. I was just so excited and like blabbing a little during the interview itself. But Brennan
did not come across that way, for whatever it's worth.
So that's actually really, really neat to hear, because I was like, but Brennan was so great. He was able to like pick up on like the things I was spewing and be like, so this very cogent and extremely interesting sentence about what you just said. And I'd be like, yes, that's what I was trying to get at. Thank you. So that was great. And it was just a wonderful segment all around. I also did poison him on coffee grounds.
Yes.
That was a complete accident. There was a moment where I like picked it up and I was like, this is coffee grounds, but they wouldn't have included it here if it wasn't edible, right? Because those like long slim packages
some
are
people
coffee
eat
grounds.
espresso beans, like chocolate covered espresso beans for fun.
But ground?
Yeah.
Pre-ground? Coffee dust?
That was funny as shit. I'm sorry.
We had to take a break. You'll notice that there was a transition, like before and after Brennan started coughing, and it's because he just, during the break, he was coughing up a storm, and he was like, I was gonna die on camera. That was hilarious. I did fully poison him on set. Took it in stride, and it made for a really funny segment, though. Yeah.
It really did. It's so much fun watching like somebody in the space actually like do stuff like that.
Hey, real quick,
Yep.
would I be able to just get you to unmute yourself on the captions? Just your mute in the Google Meet.
Oops. I'm so sorry.
Apologies for interrupting your train of thought. No, you're good.
It's okay. My brain is wet noodles, so I forgot what I was saying. But you know what? That's a perfect time for me to ask you one of our established questions. We've gone 30 minutes in. I think it's about time. So,
no, it is time.
Connie, my friend, There's a
Yes.
war going on in the TTRPG community between those of us who see dice as they truly are, which are fun click clacks to roll
Shiny math
and
rolls.
no further. And then there are those of us who see them as forbidden candies to be crunched on. Now, I am aware that there are edible dice, but these people say that that's crunching, not crunching. They want to crunch, and you need a real die to do that. So, I have to ask you, what side of this war are you on? Are you on the side of stop the crunch, or are you on the crunch crew? there are other subsections.
I was sent a list.
There's the Swallow Saviors. There's Kappa's. There's Kappa Squad, which is the Kappa let them die. There's Crunch Responsible, which I don't believe in. You can't do something irresponsible responsibly. There's the Law in Jaw. Gamer Girl Spinny Dice. There's the crotch enablers, and then there's the crotch weaponizers. That would be Abria. So, but first, we gotta figure out where you are on crotching in general. Yay or nay to crotching?
I am a staunch crunch ally. I don't do it myself, but I am a hashtag crunch ally. Okay, it's your lifestyle. You can do
Your
it if you
crunch,
want.
your choice.
Your crunch, your choice. Exactly. That's my take. I don't do it. I'm more of a squanch person. As in, I squeeze my dice really hard and I fidget with them all the time. But I'm not tempted to put them in my mouth, cause I've seen where they've been. You crunchers. Listen, and I'm here. I support you. I just want you to make healthy choices. I've seen where your dice have been. I've seen the state of your mat, of your dice mat. I have. I've seen the surfaces you've rolled them
It's
on. I've seen the
gross.
places you've taken them. If you're practicing, just do it safely. You know, like use protection. Use a mat.
Be
Clean
crunch responsible.
before and after. Be crunch spot. Like responsible
No.
insofar it is an irresponsible activity. But if you're gonna do it, like, you know, like wear a parachute, right? If you're gonna go skydiving, that's what I think, and I support it. From here.
My heart has been broken. Yeah, crunch. How I know? They don't deserve that one.
I'll get this added to the list in our crunch lines war.
So, just so you all are aware, we're taking the time. It's been 100 episodes. We're finally taking the time to put a list out of what side everybody is in this war. My personal desire is for anybody that is a crotcher or a crotch ally, I want to make a wanted poster for. But that's just me. All right, so the next question that we always ask, and don't worry, I'm going to get back to asking you questions specifically about you, but first, I want to know, you are the God Emperor of TTRPG. Any 3 things you want to have happen? If you wanted to snap your fingers and Watsy goes away, it happens. It could be anything small to like Zeus level. Like, what do you do?
Well, the first is infinite funding. Easy. The first one is just like funding for everyone for everything. Though this would go beyond TTRPGs and into just the dismantling global capitalism, just on like a universal Earth-wide scale. I don't know I mean everything's connected. So the first one would be funding related. Make sure that everyone has food to eat. Essentially, that would be the first thing I would snap my fingers and do. You know, from people. You know, working at WotC to people who are, you know, third-party publishers, to people who are super indie, like everyone gets to eat. That's the first decree I would do as God Emperor of TTRPGs. The second, now this is too much power. Now that I've solved world hunger, what do I do next? Now that I've solved that, I suppose, okay, this is going to be very selfish, and it's fine because everyone has infinite funding. But I want mine to be the best. So the second thing I'm going to decree is, infinite. I just would want, like, the infinite ability to make an animated series based off of the APs I was in. So,
Heck
like,
yes.
I would want, like, a really good relationship with an animation studio, and, like, infinite funding from various production companies and, financiers.
Do you have an animation studio in mind?
Not a specific studio, though I have some animation comps in terms of styles that I really enjoy. I really liked Arcane. That shit was sexy. That was sexy as hell. Definitely like an Arcane style painted, like, that's cool as hell. Also a big fan of anything Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli. I'm specifically thinking like Princess Mononoke and how they do violence. That's cool. Like how they do action sequences. Miyazaki's actually really good at action. People often relate like pastoral, sort of like sweet, very family-friendly artistic sensibilities with Miyazaki, but he's actually a very talented like action storyboarder and director in animation. If you watch like any action sequence,
I have been trying to get this one to watch anything Miyazaki, and
I
refuses vehemently.
No.
I refuse.
Like I know for a fact that he would love Princess Mononoke, but they will not watch it with me.
Listen. You know how when you hear one person go, you gotta check this thing out. You're like, okay, I'll get to it. And then somebody else is like, no, but seriously, you gotta check this thing out. Like, the more people tell me I have to check out Studio Ghibli, the more my brain is just like, we draw a line here and no further.
You know what you need to do, Anita, is you need to get them to watch a movie with you and don't tell them that it's a Miyazaki film. Just like toss some shit on there and make it a deep cut, a Miyazaki deep cut, not one of the popular ones.
Like the Wind Also Rises, or
yes, or the one. Oh, see, what's the one that makes me cry? Nausicaa of the Valley of the
Winds. A lot of them make me cry, though. I cry like a baby.
Yeah. They're huge tearjerkers. My third, okay, so that actually makes me think of my third decree as God King, God Emperor of TTRPGs, is I would make an unviolatable decree. It would be a gesh, one would say. It would be a command word that everyone would have to obey. And it would basically be, stop fighting. Can we please? I would ban discourse. There would be no discourse. You would not be allowed. You would have to go to therapy. Everyone is mandated by Connie law to go to therapy and learn what their own boundaries are and stop projecting their issues onto other people, and stop having discourse. That would be my third decree. Is just, I'd feed everyone, I'd get a cool animated series, and I'd make everyone stop fighting, because it is super stressful, and I'm so small, and I want it to stop. That would be my third decree.
That is... Which I think is a perfect segue. Do we want to do Petty Prime Time?
Already?
It might be a little early for Petty Prime Time.
That's for the dark roast, but if we want to do it, it sounds like you got something you gotta get off your chest.
No, we're good. I can wait. I can hold it in for at least a little bit till the second half.
You introduced it. We can go through it.
All right. This is the portion of the show where we deal with Petty Prime Time. This is the point where you can subtweet.
In real life.
In real life. Live on the air.
This is dangerous. This is a dangerous segment. This is a powder keg waiting to blow up.
Listen, I'm trying to go out spectacularly. I went for the twit loggers written about me. I want there to be receipts.
Listen, I am very much the kind of person. I am hashtag protect my peace. I'm very much like, I do not see it. I see what's happening there, and I'm like, I thought the chicken was lovely. let's just continue doing what we're doing here. But if it's petty time, this is not a subtweet to anyone specific. This is just a general you know what, a gripe. Let's just keep, regarding the discourse, this is not referencing any specific discourse, just general discourse, because TTRPG Twitter, so when I first joined the space, right, like when I was first doing Transplaner, when I was first dipping my toe into actual play, you'll notice my Twitter account is like, I'm just gonna boot it up right now. It is like from 2013, which is 10 years ago. I made it in like middle school, right? I made my Twitter account in middle school, and I didn't use it from 2013 till 2020. That 7-year period, I just didn't use my Twitter account, right? Because I was because I was I was busy getting late in college. So now. I see. So now in from the past 3-year span that I've actually been active on Twitter, I was like, I'm gonna start doing APs, and I want to get to know people in the hashtag community, right? I want to get to know people in the TTRPG community, and I really lucked out because and this was a sensibility I carried with me from my screenwriting background, from my critical social analysis background. I was like, I really want to get to know other people of color in the space specifically, and other trans and queer people. I was like, I know there's a ton of white people who play TTRPGs, and I'm just like, that's cool, but I want to find the POC. I was like, where are the people of color? And I joined the Utopia Discord server very early on, because I think it started around 2020 or something like that. And one of the really wonderful folks in the space, I remember we were on a call, it was in the green room of a show or something, and I was like, and this was 2 months into my TTRPG journey, right? Translator had been going for 8 weeks, and I was like, wow, this is such a cool space, everyone's so fun and creative, and everyone just supports each other, and this person was like, ha 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 ha, oh, you sweet summer child. And I was like, what are you talking about? Everyone's just playing games and getting along, right? Right? And then the summer of 2020 happened, with all the things about Mike Merles, that was, with WotC, and, one of the waves of cancel WotC. And I've learned that there are many, there are many waves, and this is historical too, even before, digital streaming really became a thing. So I guess just it's really tiring. I have been in a lot of different kinds of communities and ecosystems before. I've been in activist organizing ecosystems. I've been in college, liberal arts college ecosystems, which is also petty and tiring as fuck. In a lot of ways, specifically queer. Historically, women's colleges, that queer drama, if you know, you know. That's all I'm gonna say. If you know, you know. If you went to Smith or Wellesley or Mount Holyoke, if you know, you fucking know. I've been there. I've been in a part of offline queer drama among white queer anarchists. And let me tell you, that shit took years off my lifespan. But nothing holds a candle. And this is saying a lot. Nothing holds a candle to the sheer amount of vitriol and the cyclical nature of toxicity of online Twitch streaming, and I guess specifically TTRPG spaces. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It is bizarre. It is really bizarre to me.
There is something about it that is so polarizing, and that is just frustrating to me. That being on either polarizing end of an issue, either for or against, you're both exhausting. It's so exhausting.
It is super exhausting.
It's share your joy, share things that make you happy, and just give a rest to the outrage every once in a while, y'all.
You mentioned you were in a call with somebody and you were like, everybody's so fun. I was that guy, I think last week, where I was just I remember when I used to experience you.
Seriously,
just a grizzled vet in the corner.
I also feel like a grizzled vet now, 3 years in, and it's just incredible because I think part of it is just how niche and specific this space is. And it's not like games in general.
It's so small too.
Everyone knows everyone kind of, and everyone talks, and everyone's got beef, and everyone's got like
Everybody's got,
everyone's got beef with someone. Like, you can't walk 2 steps without like someone being like, like it, like
that
like,
motherfucker.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, and there's like a lot of old bad blood is kind of what I'm picking up on, and a lot of like stuff. And sometimes what's interesting is like sometimes the discourse is really, really big. Like, for instance, everything going on with Satine Phoenix, right? And like all of the like the professional misconduct and like abuse and like just financial stuff too when it came to their particular like company, and like some of it is also just really petty too. So like you'll range it, there's a scope, and it's what's exhausting is that like the really big stuff, even the really small stuff feels really big because people make it feel like such a big deal when I'm kind of sitting here. Okay, so I guess this is my subtweet. I encourage everyone to learn that words have meaning, and to please be reflexive about the conflict you find yourself embroiled in. And like, I don't mean this in like any kind of way, just like, I mean this genuinely. Like, ask yourself, do I need to tweet this? Do I need to tweet this, or can I just talk to my therapist about this? Like, I'm serious. Like, just ask yourself that. And I feel like so much Twitter TTRPG drama could be avoided if people just knew themselves better, and knew how to handle their shit better, like, for like a lack of a better term. Like,
Nikki just hit the nail on the head in chat. I think a lot of folks need to learn the difference between we just don't vibe and that's a bad person.
Yeah, completely agreed. Like, I am of the mindset that feel free to dislike whoever you want to dislike. Feel free to mute them, soft block them, whatever. It is your online space. You get to curate it however you want. I'm a strong believer of that. I'm a strong believer that if you want to block someone just because the vibes are off, you don't need to prove that they're like a Nazi to want to block them. You could just think that they're kind of annoying. I'm serious. If you just think I do that all the time, especially like random people I don't know in my replies, like being like weird Twitter reply guys, I'll just block them. You know, like the father gamer husbands, I'll just block them. And I don't know who they are. They haven't necessarily said anything bigoted. They're just kind of annoying. I'll do it. By the same token, also recognize that just because you're blocking someone, specifically because they're annoying, or just because you don't like someone, like Nikki said, like doesn't necessarily mean they are terrible people who are rotten to the core, right? And I think there's a sliding scale of assholery, right? Because on one end it's like, oh, this guy's just kind of annoying, or like, nah, I just don't think I want to play TTRPGs with this person. Like, I just don't think our play styles and our approach to TTRPGs meshes, which is fine, which is not a value judgment. It becomes a problem when people make it a value judgment, right? When they conflate opinion and, like, their own feelings with, like, a kind of, like, factual statement about the validity or worth, or, this word has been, I think, reply guide to death, safety of a person, which is also why I, just as a kind of like praxis for myself, I try to move away from the mindset of a safe space. First of all, because I don't think safe spaces truly exist. Because there's so many hurt feelings on Twitter being like, I thought this was a safe space. You all said it was a safe space and it wasn't. And I'm like, because it doesn't exist, because they shouldn't have promised a safe space. Because you can't. You cannot. Like, it's not possible. Someone's feelings conflict is inevitable because conflict is a part of who we are as people, right? So I much prefer the term brave space, where folks, you know, a space where it is encouraged to voice difference, as long as that difference isn't bigoted, right? Where conflict is fine, like seen as normal, and there are systems and procedures and arbitration and moderation put in place to facilitate conflict if and when it happens, right? And that's the kind of what will change a situation from being kind of an uncomfortable TTRPG session to something that is a huge Twitter drama that blows up for 10 weeks on TTRPGs, right? Is that missing step of like, showrunners, and this goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, right? Like showrunners knowing how to run a show and like having a professional mindset to running a space that is both a professional and a creative and like a socially entangled, like you're usually playing with your friends, right?
Right.
That you're also paying. So shit just always gets like really gray and murky when money and friendship is involved too. And quote unquote like fame in any way. And by that I mean when there's an audience involved too. So like when you add all these things into a blender and like press the button, of course there's gonna be toxicity. Of course there's gonna be drama because this is such a new industry and no one knows what the rules are. So we're stepping on each other's toes all the time, and we're hurting each other all the time because we don't know how to handle our shit. And like, I'm coming from like a entertainment background too, like, you know, there's like at least celebrities in Hollywood, like have a kind of like, it's been happening for 20, 30, 40, 50 years now. There's kind of like a knowledge of how to like handle a relationship between fans and celebritydom and like, you know, that kind of parasociality, right? There's a bit more like a background and scholarship on it. But now with TTRPGs, it's so like, everything's so entangled because your biggest fans are also probably people that you work with, especially on like an indie level, right? People who are in the stream watching are people who might also be streamers, right? So there's that aspect of it too.
Yeah, I you got me thinking of one. There's a funny story that I have where it kind of going back to the everybody has beef with everybody. I was gonna be on a show, and somebody who was on the show was like, "Hey, I just want to give you heads up about that noir guy," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, tell me." Like they thought I was a different dude, and so they were telling me about me, and I'm like,
So Nora, that's such an interesting learning experience though, because you kind of got to see what people were saying about you. You know what I mean? And like, it's so rare. Yeah. I'm sorry that happened to you because that sounds like such an awkward and difficult and uncomfortable interaction. And I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Well, it was fine. I knew where a lot of these rumors came from, so it was like kind of hearing if this person was being real with me, just like, hey, just be careful because he's done this, that, and that, and I'm like, okay, all right.
Did you tell them?
I was like, I think now's the point where I have to tell you that you're talking to the wrong black guy in the cast. I'm Noir. Like,
I need to know their reaction. I need to know how they reacted, Noir. I have to know.
Well, it was a lot of apologizing, and I just went, I'm guessing you heard that from this source, and this source. They're like, yeah. And I was like, well, here's my side of the story. I can't change what you already think about me, but let's put on a good show, and hopefully I can prove you wrong. We put on a good show. They were really cool. We haven't talked since the show, but I like to imagine that, maybe they left with a different impression, but it was really weird hearing somebody trying to protect me from me.
Yeah, that's a super awkward and uncomfortable and honestly like really intense and stressful situation to be in, and like it sounds like you really handled yourself well. If that had happened to me, like I would have been like, I'm not streaming with you. Like I'm not gonna do. I would have just left. And like, so like props and kudos to you for like actually going through with the show, and like it sounds like you were like you handled it really well, because that is such an uncomfortable position to put a guest in. That is like talking. I don't know. There's just like talking shit about someone in the green room. I don't know. That's just such a.
Why would you invite someone?
Why would you invite you on?
If
they didn't like you, why would there be that invitation in the first place? That's just bizarre to me. Yeah. So
you know how I am. Somebody goes, "Hey, you want to do a thing?" And I'm like, golden retriever response. Oh, me. Okay, I'll do it.
But like they invited you in the first place, right? They put you there. Yeah, that's bizarre to me. That's really unprofessional, honestly. And I'm sorry you went through that.
That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, listen, people are allowed to dislike whoever they want. Like I said before, like if that person just straight up disliked you, whatever, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, whatever, like we can still work together. But to like kind of go out of their way and like besmirch your name, I don't know. Something about that doesn't quite sit right with me. It's odd. It's an odd thing to Dude.
If you don't know someone well enough to know that you're talking to them, maybe you shouldn't be talking about them.
And like, if you don't know someone well enough to know what they look like, why would you believe these things? Like, so it's so odd to me that like they didn't. That's what really they didn't even know it was you, and yet they believed all these things about you, right?
There is
really
another
odd.
person on the show that kind of looks like me, so that's kind of where it was like, hey, it's just like, wrong one. You had a 50-50 shot and you chose poorly.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, they fumbled that. they really got a nat one there. Yeah. Again, so sorry that happened to you, Noir.
No, it's funny. It just reminded me of that story, and I'm like, oh god. I would like to do a penny primetime if I may. I just wanted everybody to know that I'm enjoying my iced found familiar coffee. I bring that up for no reason. I just thought that my found familiar coffee is really delicious. It's good hot and cold. No, nothing other than that. Wouldn't be mentioning this for no reason. It's just,
We love supporting our indie makers and creators in the space. We do.
I don't want my content to be all about hating on in a company, so I'm supporting Found Familiar. Everybody should go and get some.
Actually, yes, there is a promo code for Found Familiar. You can get 10% off your order with Christmas Cafe.
We finally did it! We finally did it right. They've been a sponsor of us since season 1.
We never plug it. We never plug this.
In the entire 3 years we've been on, I think we sold 2 bags. Please help.
Yes, go order. I'm not a coffee person, but if I were, I would drink Found Familiar. That's how you know it's real.
Well, if you like tea. No, I actually don't have the Friday afternoon tea code. We're not going to go that far. But sort of veering our conversation back, Connie, you've actually done a very good job of sort of not just like building the space that is Transplanar, but also expanding your own sort of star, because I've seen your TikToks and a lot of your cool TikToks on like narrative focused GMing, on how to build compelling villains. Like, how did you find your voice in that space specifically? Because TikTok can be so frustrating and so hard to hit right.
Yeah. That's a great. The two of you. Can I just really quick press pause and just shout out the two of you for having great questions? I've done a lot of interviews at this point, and these are some of my favorite questions that I've been asked.
Hell yeah!
So thank you. It's great. I also wasn't following Critical Misses for some reason on Transplanar's account, so I have rectified that.
Yeah.
Oh, we gotta have channel beef now.
You are following me? The fuck? Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Well, that's manufactured discourse right now.
Yeah.
I'll put out a diss track later.
A diss track?
That's what the space needs more of. Like, let's stop subtweeting each other. And
if people started putting out like rap diss tracks instead of subtweets, I would actually be pro discourse. Especially if the diss tracks were kind of good. Like, if the diss tracks were kind of like nice though, I would be pro discourse. Anyway, so TikTok is a really interesting app. I actually really enjoy it. It is one of my favorite social media apps right now. I am actually liking it better than Twitter right now for, I think, obvious reasons, because the discourse, you have to seek it out and you have to like go down a TikTok rabbit hole and read comments and get yourself mad. Whereas on Twitter, you just kind of scroll and it happens, right? But on TikTok, if you just keep scrolling, you can see a drama video and just go, I don't want to deal with that. And a cute kitten, right? And then you just keep scrolling and, like it's great. So in terms of TTRPG TikTok, so there is a distinct difference is what I've noticed between D&D TikTok, which is what I would say is like 80 to 90% of the content and views and engagement of anything RPG related on TikTok. D&D, I would say, has an even bigger chokehold on TikTok than it does on Twitter. because at least there's like a pretty, I think, thriving indie TTRPG ecosystem on Twitter. Whereas there are indie makers and like publishers and streamers on TTRPG TikTok, but the level of engagement they get is like a fraction of the engagement that any sort of D&D content gets on TikTok. So that's the number one thing, I think.
They've got beggar talk, which is...
Yes, there's the hashtag beggar talk. If you don't know what that is, it's basically people who are like, I'm begging you to play a game other than D&D. And like people use that hashtag when they are indie. Like that's now become also like the umbrella has widened to include like any sort of indie TikTok is there. So what's interesting about TikTok is, first of all, because my TikTok account, which is by Connie Chang, is blowing up. It's like, it's growing, in a really great way. I get a lot of new viewers, in our streams from TikTok specifically, and a lot of new listeners to our podcast backlog, also from TikTok. We've also gotten some new like Patreon subscribers from our TikTok and new Discord members too. So like and new YouTube subscribers too. Like that, a huge boon in our YouTube actually. So TikTok has been great for like driving audiences to our other platforms. I haven't actually done the math or sat down and like done the like analytics or conversion, so I don't know what percentage of people who follow me on other platforms / our like YouTube subscribers or whatnot.
Right.
But I think a lot of going viral and blowing up on TikTok is like maybe 30 to 50% luck. And the other, like, 70 to 50%, I would say, is, like, understanding the algorithm and producing content that is very algorithm-friendly. Because on TikTok, it's all about the algorithm. Like, the things that come up on your For You page, like, I've read all different kinds of literature, I guess, and, like, watched TikToks about the TikTok algorithm, which, to my understanding, is constantly changing. The rules of the algorithm are constantly changing. I know there was a couple weeks ago where people on TikTok, creators of TikTok, were complaining that their views were suddenly tanking, like, for so many different creators, and then now the views are climbing back up, right? Like, who knows? So, like, my approach is to just sort of go, like, I'm just gonna keep putting out content that I would enjoy watching, that, like, follows these best practices, and, like, hope for the best, right?
I was just about to ask you, do you ever feel stuck in a niche? Like, do you ever find yourself wanting to make a TikTok about something else, but you're like, that's not what the audience is expecting?
Absolutely. That's a great follow-up question, actually, because TikTok in particular, the algorithm is, like, really rapaciously good at figuring out what will go viral and feeding that. So if, for example, they're like, oh, your cute cat videos are super popular, then they will, like, those cute cat videos are what your account's known for. And if you try to post anything outside of that, like if you try to post like a diary or a how-to, you're gonna get like a fraction of your usual views and engagement. So like, I was noticing that a little bit with my account. My videos that do the best are so I'm actually really lucky that the niche I've kind of been pigeonholed into on TikTok is a niche I enjoy, and a niche that is really good for converting viewers to other platforms, which I think I really struck gold with that. Cause the TikToks that do the best on my account are the ones where I put clips from actual play, series. So it's like Transplaner, Second Stranger clips, or like the mini-series clips that we do. And I always usually like to open them with a hook, and then I'll play the clip. There's like a nice little like TikTok-friendly mobile format overlay, for the clip itself too. Excuse me, I just bumped my mic. And those videos tend to do really well for me. And I've been experimenting with the kinds of videos that do well. I'm like, are dramatic videos good? Are like 60-second videos good? Are 15-second videos good? Are comedic videos good? What about these videos that highlight specific players and like myself, like which videos do best? And I'll just kind of throw them all at the algorithm and see which ones chart the best. And overall, those do really well.
I can tell you, anytime the clip involves you flirting with your players, that's the ones that always end up on my For You page.
The ones of me flirting with my players?
Like when you got your players all flustered with your NPCs and everything, I'm like, okay, I see you, TikTok.
Yeah, and that also speaks to the kind of content that TTRPG viewers enjoy. You know, like something I've learned is, you know, I get a lot of comments on my TikToks, those ones in particular, of like, oh my god, can I play your table? Or like, this looks like so much fun, which is always very affirming, and really encouraging to read. Like, I'm always very touched and honored that, you know, folks want to play at my table. And I think it speaks toward like a desire, because of the growing visibility of APs as a medium for people to get into TTRPGs, specifically D&D in the first place. I think, so there's a lot of like discourse, not in terms of like social problems, but in terms of like play culture, around like what new D&D players expect now, like kind of when they first play their first D&D game, especially if they come from like watching Critical Role or Dimension 20 or their favorite like AP stream that isn't those two giants, right? And I think I've seen some interesting takes on Twitter that are like, people playing a home game expecting it to feel like Critical Role are gonna be like really sorely disappointed, and the whole like Matt Mercer effect, which that poor man, he never asked for any of this. Can I say for the, you know, can I just straight up say like he never asked for any of this? Please lay off him. Anyway,
on the show we have determined that the Matt Mercer effect is the ability to look good in a long vest.
Look, yeah,
yes,
we had him on here specifically to destroy the Mercer effect, so that's what it now stands for.
No, I love that. I need to get a long vest actually to see if I can rock it. But yeah, the take of being like, yeah, like people expect their games to feel like a show. And the flip side, I like saw this tweet the other day, and they're like, and the flip side is that they expect people running AP shows expect their shows to feel like a game, when it's like really the opposite. And I have thoughts about that take. Which is, I see what they're trying to get at, I think. And I think that if a new D&D player is hopping into a D&D game and they really want it to feel like Critical Role, I think what they mean by that is they really want rich roleplay and a table that supports like a strong roleplay culture. They want like a cool story that has like a cogent beginning, middle, and end. And they kind of want their character to go through some sort of change. They want their character to experience some kind of arc, and to have the active play be not just ludically fulfilling, and enriching in that regard, but also narratively resonant. And I think that presents a shift in general approaches to playing D&D, because even like maybe 20 years ago, like there's always been people who are like roleplay forward, but I think like now more than ever, especially as younger queer and trans players and a lot of players of color are like entering the hobby for what feels like really the first time in a long time, there's kind of a push toward different forms of storytelling and different things to get out of it, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think if you want your home game to feel like a show, there are ways you as a player and you as a GM can work toward that without it like actually being a show, right? There are ways to GM that are very narratively forward, which is what I do my advice series on TikTok about, right? Like how to like build villains, like build plots, you know, create hooks that will help make your like home game feel kind of like narratively elevated, as opposed to like a more traditional like sandbox or like your characters aren't the main characters, you're just characters in a world that I create. You know, like sort of feeling, which isn't exactly very narratively empowering.
You know, I find that one of the things that I don't see too many folks doing when they put together an actual play, in the tables that I have been at where they have done this, it's been amazing, is describing the kind of game that they're going to be running, which is to say, you know, if it's just going to be a kick the doors down, action packed, we're fighting every episode type deal, I would like to know that beforehand. And if we're going for like a political thriller where words are going to be as deadly as swords, I would like to know that. Like, I think one of the things that I would love to see us get a little bit better at is packaging the game so that we can make sure that this is what the players want to sit and play. You know, I love your advice series on TikTok. You talk a lot about a lot of the things that I have issues with GMs. Like, making sure everybody at the table has a turn to be awesome. Like, it seems so like it seems so obvious. I'm saying like I'm sorry. It seems so obvious that people want to come to the table to feel like heroes, but I can't tell you how many times I've played with GMs that have been stingy with heroic moments, rewards, moments of levity. Like, it's just it's really validating to hear that advice given, because it makes games awesome when you get to feel awesome for being at the table.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because what you're saying, Nora, made me think of two things. So the first is, I think the stinginess with like plot secrets or like spotlight or like letting players be cool comes from a traditional mindset of adversarial GMing, which is, so I'm not knocking it. It's not necessarily a value judgment. It does become one for me if that's not what your table wants and you're doing it anyway. And they've explicitly said, I don't want that, and you keep doing it. Then I think you're just being a dick. So, you know, adversarial versus a more collaborative framework to GMing, where the GM lets go of some agency over the truth of the world, and also, like, lets go of the idea that their world is the most important thing, and realizes that, no, like, it's the characters. And ideally, the characters are intertwined with the world and care about the world as much as you care about it too, right? Because I think sometimes where that, like, mindset of the GM comes from too is, like, they treat their player characters like they're tourists in like a cool theme park they made, right? They kind of treat their players like theme park visitors, and they're the theme park architect, and they're like, look at this cool ride I made, and the players are like, ooh, I want to go on the merry-go-round, and the GM's like, well then fine, and I'll like punish you for not going on this cool ride I made, but going on the merry-go-round. And that's just like and I think that also comes from like a lot of the design of D&D as a system, because I see this happening in D&D a lot, because it's really, honestly, D&D is kind of rules-based, kind of hostile to GMs, because the GM has to do, rules as written, the lion's share of work, and there's not even a guarantee your players will even interface with the work you do. Like, that's not even a guarantee, which is why so much GM advice online is prep less. And I think that comes from a failure of system more so than a failure of GMs and players and people interpreting the text at the table. I think it's a failure of the text.
If I may, I think you're absolutely right, and nothing to me personifies that better than the Ranger. I feel like in order for the Ranger to truly be what it's supposed to be, it requires more work on the GM's part. Like with any other class in the game, you can do your adventure and really not even think about the terrain. I've got you guys going from city to city, but if I want the Ranger to be as awesome as they should be, well, now we have to consider, all right, you go from the city there's a forest, from the forest there's a swamp, from the swamp there's a mountain, now you get to the other city. Now you get to be useful or not, depending on the environment. And it's just like...
And then your players are like, there's a skyship, we'll take that instead. And then your Ranger feels left out.
And the Ranger's like, well, I'm useless. So that, you're actually hitting on something really interesting, which is, so in D&D, classes, well, in 5th edition, ostensibly all editions do, classes are differentiated about like the cool utility and combat and a little bit of like the roleplay things that they have access to. So like, as you mentioned, Rangers are differentiated by their ability to like know the terrain and have a favorite enemy, right? Paladins can just cast kind of like detect good and evil, and they're all about like smiting the undead. Like they have, you know, clerics have turn undead and whatnot, right? And fighters are about like cool combat maneuvers, generally speaking, and bards are about like art made magic. So what's interesting about D&D is that ostensibly each class brings a different viewpoint and a different lens into the world. So if you're playing with a party that has a paladin, a ranger, a cleric, and a rogue, then you can sort of like be like, well, then ostensibly we might, for all 4 classes to feel equally useful, in the logic of the text itself, there should be undead encounters, there should be encounters in the Ranger's terrain, there should be encounters where the rogue gets to sneak attack, there should be encounters where the cleric gets to do cleric shit. And if that doesn't happen, then those classes are gonna feel like kind of useless. Like, if we're in an airship, the ranger's gonna feel useless for the entire campaign, which is something that other systems, for example, I'm just gonna bring up one of my favorite PBTA games of all time, Masks, A New Generation. I think it's really well designed. Where each playbook, for example, the legacy playbook or something like that, generates the fiction that the GM has to use. So the playbook, the legacy, you're like a scion of like a really cool superhero family, and like your family, who have a lot of expectations for you, become key NPCs as part of the character generation process that the GM basically has to use. So if there was something like that in D&D, where like part of the class you pick generates world things that the GM has to use, I think that would go a long way to bridging the gap between like GM prep load and making every player at the table feel included from the text itself.
There's a saying that I kind of feel like encapsulates what we're talking about here, that you shoot your monks. Like your monk.
Yes, they want to deflect projectiles.
If you're a monk player, you want that moment, and the onus is on the GM to make that moment happen. A player can't make that moment happen on their own. Whereas, like when you're talking about Mass, the player makes it happen by virtue of having created the character in that playbook. I completely agree with you. That's why I think one of my favorite classes is the Paladin. The Paladin has amazing role-playing stuff out the gate with their tenets. They have useful abilities in combat, and they have useful abilities the way I judge if a class is written well whenever I try a new system is, can it work in a Lord of the Rings like battle type situation, and can it work in a Game of Thrones political situation? There aren't too many classes in 5th edition I feel that work particularly well in political situations. And I think a lot of credit goes to Critical Role and the Vox Machina team for showing an interesting way where Rangers can be useful in a political situation in the cartoons. Like, you'll notice I always get them mixed up. Vax that notices
Vaxalia.
Oh, there's a hidden dragon here somewhere. Like, that's a way to make Rangers useful in a political situation, and that took creativity. That's not something that's inherent in the system. So I say all that to say that I agree with you completely.
100%. And Matt does a great job of like making all of his players feel spotlighted and included at the table, both narratively and mechanically. And what's interesting about that is, I think one of my biggest gripes I have several gripes from a system design standpoint as a game designer with D&D. One of them is that there are so many passive abilities that are on the GM to trigger, like deflect missiles, or like you can sense when your favorite foe is nearby. The GM has to remember, especially if the foe is hidden, that they're nearby and that you can sense it and that you have that ability in the first place. I want there to be more, which is why I love barbarians, because raging is a bonus action you decide to do. Which is why it's so badass when Grog goes, I would like to rage. Cause like the player gets to do that and like make that decision and change the narrative because of it. So like if Rangers got to do like, if Rangers had an active ability that affected the environment in some way, like without having it to always rely on a GM or outside trigger, I think that would go a long way to making specific classes feel more enjoyable and rewarding and useful to play. Noir, you also mentioned something kind of earlier on about you wish you had more people like were upfront about the kinds of games they were playing, so you would know if is this a slash and hack, is this a dungeon crawl, is this a political intrigue, and I completely agree with you. Some folks in chat have been talking about how like that's like part of Session Zero. I 100% agree. Yeah. And I have a very like specific approach to doing Session Zeros, especially for the actual plays I'm in, which are like, I've been told my approach to Session Zeros are like some of the most rigorous in a positive way. Some of the most like, rigorous, specific, and like upfront and transparent ways that folks have done Session Zeros before. Because I will straight up tell people like, yo, like this 2-shot is about the power of queer found family and healing from trauma. Those are the main themes. Here's what they mean. I would love it if you built your characters around those themes. here are some specific questions that I want you to answer as your character, and like let's go through character creation together and talk about how your PCs can be directly involved in the main plot, right? And like how their backstory is directly involved in the main plot, and like this is also like the genre that we're playing in, right? So like those themes can fit any genre, right? They can fit comedy action road trip. They could also fit a sci-fi horror survival, right? Like those themes could go anywhere. So like that is like the extra step I like to take when it comes to doing session zeros at my table. Specifically AP tables where, again, like I kind of like approach APs as an art form and as a way of like practicing and putting into play acting and performance. Honestly, in addition to, and also kind of more so than being players in a game. Because I think, so that brings me back to the tweet I thought earlier about how like shows want to feel like a game, which I honestly kind of agree with that tweet insofar as like, I think that's kind of a pitfall of some, you know, some actual play approaches where people are still trying to treat it as we're a group of friends playing a game instead of we're a group of friends playing a game and we're putting on a show. And I think it's important to keep the show aspect in mind. And I would have concerns if you were running your AP exactly how you run a home game, from a production standpoint in particular. I think it's just as soon as you add an audience and any kind of money to the mix, things become different. Not in a bad way, they're just different, and you have to change how you run stuff to fit that.
Absolutely. Like, I never really got into the whole we're just a couple of friends playing D&D and there just happens to be a camera type spiel. I feel like that does a disservice to everybody that's involved. So no, I agree with that completely. I frankly would love if people would embrace that it's a show more than it's just being a game with friends at the table, but that's my personal.
No, I'm completely with you, Noir. And what's interesting is I've seen, less so now, knocking on wood, but I've seen, you know, and I'm sure this is still a mindset that floats around, but I've seen like maybe like a year ago or something, like some sort of take, some sort of one of the cyclical discourses, right? One of the cyclical TT, because it repeats itself.
Oh,
you know, we're Sisyphus rolling the same boulder up the hill, and then we get crushed by it, and then we roll the same boulder up again. One of the cyclical discourse topics is people being, I don't really understand. People being upset, I guess, that some people, like myself, might dare to suggest that an AP should be run differently than a home game, right? And that upsetness seems to come from a place of like, that feels condescending. Like, how dare you say I can't just stream my friends playing a game on Twitch? Like, we don't want to become big and famous. Like, we're not out here to become millionaires. Like, we're not out here for like the fame and the clout. Like, we're just here because we just want to share our home game with the world. And I'm like, that's great. I'm not knocking on that. Right? But like, what I've for sure seen that take before. And like the way the take is phrased is actually a value judgment when what I'm saying is not. Right? Because the value judgment they're making is my game is somehow more pure, more righteous than yours, because you're kind of out here to like make money or like get famous, which is not even the case, it's not why I do this, right? I do this because it is an art form and I'm an artist and I enjoy it. It's like theater making, right? It's a form of creative expression. And it's just, that's the kind of take I think that really kind of, going back to the petty segment, that kind of like, that grinds my gears a little bit, because I'm like, well, not really, because the instant you start streaming your game, especially if you're an affiliate, like then you kind of have a responsibility to your viewers and your players, to take care of them in a way, that is different and in some ways greater than how you would take care of players at just a home game. Because if there's any kind of like audience player interaction, any kind of money involved, you have to be responsible about it and you have to be proactive about it instead of just being like, no, we're just a group of friends, like, you know, we're just a family, we're just a group of friends putting things on Twitch, and like based on the cyclical nature of like drama and discourse and whatnot, we can sort of see what happens when those channels that are supposedly family channels, right, blow up and implode, right?
I walked away from so many explosions, not realizing how close my ass was to get burned.
And that's part of like what's kind of scary about this space too, because like that's also part of why in the place in my TTRPG journey, and my understanding of myself as an actual play professional, where I am, if I don't know you already, I can be a little hesitant to sign onto a project. If it's something like a one shot, like it's lower stakes, that's fine. But like, it's part of like what you're saying, like Nora, like, is this channel gonna blow up? Like, do you all actually know how to run a channel in a way that takes care of the people who are a part of it? Or do you not really understand how to do that?
Are
like,
you using the We're a
right?
Family to step over people's boundaries?
So fun fact. Remember I told you there was that really fun interaction where somebody was warning me against me?
Uh-huh. Call back.
So I walked away from a particular channel, and they made sure that people thought a certain way of me, and that's why I wasn't surprised when that person said that. It was just like, and that's the messiness of like these We're a Family communities, because when the shit breaks apart, people get vicious. like, like, and I think. I think we've kind of been talking around like the fact that like there's a lot of like, hey, let's all be positive in this space, but then it can turn real ugly real quick. Thus, we've kind of become veterans in dealing with the discourse, as you said, and it's just that's why I opened the show saying like it's very impressive that Transplanter has not only stuck around but has done right by the people that's a part of it. Like that's real, because there have been communities that have come and gone since the creation of Transplanter that have just done folks dirty. So I just, again, kudos to having, kudos to keeping y'all shit together. Like,
I appreciate that, and so much of that credit has to go to C, who's one of the co-producers. They, working together, the two of us are always trying to be as intentional and proactive about any sort of like community building that goes on backstage, and how we treat our players. Like we're always doing our best to be as transparent as we can, and also to be as like thoughtful as we can. And of course, like we are, so the other flip side of this is like, of course, we're also still human, like we are still fallible, right? Like there are, we're not perfect. Like sometimes we might, drop the ball when it comes to like, one or, multiple aspects of production or something. And I think what's important is also being able to hold flexibility for mistakes that aren't like traumatizing, right? Like, and I think that's also something I like a praxis and a lesson I try to hold for the people around me too. Like I try to practice compassion for myself and for the other people around me. And part of, so part of what that means is like being compassionate if like a player like has to cancel last minute, right? Like understand that, like being flexible and understanding that, right? And also like being flexible and understanding if players like show up but they're like not fully in it because something happened, or it's a low energy day, like stuff like that. We're all people, right? So like we don't ask for our players to be to be perfect all the time, because that's an impossible ask, right? And like the flip side is like we ask for flexibility, patience, grace, and understanding from our players as well. For us as the showrunners to like also need to take some mental health days, or like to be like a little bit flexible with how we run things sometimes too. But at the same time, still try to hold ourselves to a high standard. So like, I think something else that bothers me sometimes in the TTRPG space is it feels like, on one hand, like a space where people are like, yeah, like, like we're just here to have fun, do what you need, like take the time you need. But like, there's also sometimes folks who it feels like have a very low tolerance for any kind of mistake, or any kind of accident, especially if it doesn't hurt anyone, or like any kind of fuck up, which is like a very human fuck up, right? As opposed to like anything that's actually like a cycle of harm, or like a hurtful thing. So like, something else, if I were like the God King of like TTRPGs, is to be like, recognize the humanity in each other, and please be gentle and kind, especially when we don't know what's happening.
No mistakes are allowed at TTRPG Twitter. Get wrecked.
One of the things that I try to remind myself and to convey is that there is a difference between malice and ignorance. And like if somebody does something out of ignorance, that is something that you can fix. That is something that you can work around. That's something that you can talk through. Not everybody knows everything. That's fine. But when there's malice, when I did that to say fuck you, that's when, okay, my line is here. You've crossed it. We're done. I think I personally, and I'm very curious as to what your thoughts are, is I think one of the things that are required in this space for longevity and for success is to have a set of guidelines that you stick to and you do not stray from. Like,
I am with you, Noir. So like this kind of like bridges into a conversation about safety tools, right?
Yeah.
So that's such a safety tools. I have feelings about safety tools. First of all, use them. That's like the baseline feeling, like you gotta use them, especially in an AP. You gotta use some kind of safety tool, right? What the safety tool looks like, up to you. What works for your table, right? I'm not here to like tell you what it needs to look like, right? So whatever works between the contract you have with yourself as a GM, showrunner, producer, and the players, right? So what's really interesting about safety tools is I've been in hundreds of sessions at this point. And I've played with dozens of different players, and I've played at like dozens of different channels and spaces at this point. And I think people need to use them more. Because even if a channel has safety tools in place, that doesn't mean players use them. And sometimes it's like, oh, this is a 3-shot, and this is the last episode, and like I'm kind of uncomfortable with what happened, but you know what, we're gonna end soon anyway, like it's fine. Which is different from like, this is an ongoing show, and I'm uncomfortable with something that was introduced during session 0, or the first session, there's been 12 episodes and I haven't said anything. And I've let it bubble up and bubble up and bubble up and bubble up, and maybe I've gossiped about it to other people who are not the channel runner or who are not the people involved, and, you know, and like, at that point, I'm kind of like, that's on you. That
Toughing
you
it up for the sake of content is not cool.
Exactly. I'm like, so part of what safety tools means is, first of all, if someone X-cards something or brings something up, you have to get rid of that content and figure out a way forward. I don't care if like what they're X-carding was a crucial part of your plot. As a GM, you have to change it. Like, and that's happened to me before. Like, I've been X-carded / like things have been brought up during, cause we have consistent session zeros. It's not just at the beginning of a campaign. We check in regularly with our cast at the beginning of every arc. Where like, as we onboard new cast members, they might have a line that is related to a lore drop I had since like before we invited that cast member on. Which at that point I'm like, okay, I just have to change it. You know, like that's just kind of what has to happen, which is fine, which is not a burden, right? It's a change, but like the safety and comfort of my players is always more important, right? So that's one side of safety tools, which is if something is brought up and is voiced, you have to honor that. Because even if there is something happening in the content of your plot or your story that could like, you know, that is really, even could be really big. Again, this is a show with an ensemble, and your ensemble's safety and your ensemble's comfort is always more important. That is a part of the story you're telling together. And if you violate that to tell the story, then you're not being a good director, and you're not being a good showrunner, you're not being a good GM. So that's one side of the safety tool conversation. The other side is, you have to use them, right? Players, then, if the GM has committed to and is honoring the safety tools that are brought up to them, then players need to honor their own boundaries by voicing them. Like, how do you expect to build trust as an ensemble if you can't even tell someone that you're feeling uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Right? And at that point, that's on you. Like, you have to communicate it in some way. And then it becomes on the person you communicate it to, if they're a showrunner, to implement it. Right?
I
Then
feel
the ball
so
is in their
very
court.
validated right now. You have no idea.
No, because I feel like that's such a huge problem in this space, which is people don't actually use safety tools, which hurts me, right, as the showrunner and as the GM, because I'm trusting you to use them.
Yes.
Because then I feel empowered as a GM to take big swings at you, right? And if you're not using them, then I don't feel safe to do that as a GM. Like, I don't know if I can trust you, right? If I know that you've been holding on to this and not communicating it, right? So it's different if people actually communicate it, and then like I hear it however, you know, from whatever channel I need to hear it, and I can implement it moving forward. Like, I understand if some people are uncomfortable X-carding it in the moment, right? Maybe they need a few days to process. Like, that's fine. As long as you tell us soon at some point before it continues and you continue to trigger yourself or you continue to like get uncomfortable.
So here's an experience I had. I was on a show. I ended up walking away from the show, and once I walked away from the show, I got a couple of messages that they were upset. They basically said, I wanted to use the safety tools, but I was uncomfortable with. Again, I wanted to be your friend, so I didn't want to drop a letter on you. And I'm like, the safety tool is meaningless unless it's used.
Exactly.
Because by virtue of having a safety tool, that's basically an agreement between all parties that if we don't like where the car is going, we all have the ability to press the brakes. So I'm gonna just drive, trusting y'all to press the brakes if there's a problem. And no break. Like we had the X and O system and Stars and Wishes. No letter was dropped. Nothing was mentioned in the Stars and Wishes. Like at that point, what can you do?
Like you don't know if you need to turn. Like you're driving this car into a wall. Nobody is telling you that you need to stop or turn.
Yep. Yeah, no, it can be really frustrating and honestly really stress-inducing and scary to be on the receiving end of whatever drama or whatever blow up that happens because someone else didn't communicate their feelings, right? And I think part of the hesitation around people using those safety tools in the way they were intended comes from, I think it could come from several different places. One of them can be if the channel itself does not have a great track record with handling safety issues, because then that can be really disempowering for a player to use them. But at that point, I would say it's the fault of the channel as opposed to the fault of whoever, was exploring content or did something that made someone uncomfortable who didn't flag it, right? Like another is just like, I don't even know. I don't so cause how I feel about it is it doesn't have to be a big deal, right? If something happened in a session that you're like, oh, I actually didn't love how that played out, oh, that was actually kind of triggering for me. I've been in those situations before, right? And the way I've brought them up, was serious because it was a serious thing that happened to me or, which wasn't intentional at all, right? Which I also recognize. And wasn't part of our stated lines or veils, right? So there was no way that anyone at the table could have known that would have made me uncomfortable, right? Which I understand and I recognize. The way I brought it up was serious, but it also wasn't a big deal. Whenever I flag things, on my end as a safety thing, I'll come in and I'll say hey, so that actually made me feel kind of uncomfortable. I see what you're trying to do. Can we try to figure out a way forward? And usually the response, I've been at, tables that are great. Right? And the response has always been oh God, yes, I didn't even realize it would come off that way. We don't want it to come off that way as well. How can we work with you to make it better? Right? And I'm a confrontational ass person, in person. So if something is making me uncomfortable, especially at a table that that I care about, I will bring it up, right? The way I try to be careful with the way I bring it up too, because I try to be careful about not phrasing it as a value judgment on whatever happened or whoever did the thing to make me uncomfortable, because I approach it with good faith. I approach it with the good faith that they didn't do it on purpose. Right. I was recent, in a situation where, and the way this was handled was really great. And I feel this is the table I really enjoy playing at. This was no one's fault, right? This wasn't any one person being a dick or anything like that. It was completely unintentional. And, something happened where I think my character was being, received in such a way that I personally was oh, that's not really the kind of story I'm interested in telling with this character. So during the next time that we got to have a break out of character, during our break, I brought it up. And the table was amazing. The GM was amazing at receiving my concern. They were oh my God, I didn't mean for your character to be received in this way. Now I know. Now we all know. And the player in question was even hey, can I DM you? Can we work out a different way that your character could be perceived by my character moving forward? And I was great. Boogie, woogie, woogie. And we moved forward. And that was it. That was all it needed to be. Right. And I love that table to death and I love that show to death. Right. And it's great. And it wasn't a problem. It was, I was uncomfortable, and it was intense for me, but I was also recognizing that a lot of it was my own my own baggage. You know, I was like, oh, I'm recognizing I'm being triggered by the situation because I have been misconstrued in the past, and I'm feeling this is happening to my character in a way, in terms of a storyline that I'm not interested in exploring. That's on me, right? Like, that's my stuff that I brought up, right? So,
honestly, like, using safety tools should be as perceived as being as much a part of the game as rolling dice. Like, you go into the table expecting to roll dice, expect maybe to use a safety tool or two. It's like I was doing a lot of paid games for a while there, and I don't know why, but the term safety tools has a connotation that a certain demographic of people who were buying games at the time were uncomfortable with. So I've renamed them scene directions, and I try and flavor them like, hey, you're all co-director with me. So if like there is something that doesn't work out in the scene, we'll just, use our scene directions to change the scene. And it's like putting cheese on broccoli. It's the goddamn same. It's the same thing. Like, but sometimes people need that, and that's fine. One of the things that I advocate for is there is no set limit of safety tools. If you need to create one specifically for your table, do it. If you have a table that's full of people that talk too much, create a shut the fuck up safety tool.
Wait, I love that though. That's hilarious.
Z for zip it.
Z for zip it.
Yo, I might put that on the poster. I mean, but I mean, like, these things are fluid and should be evolving, and you have the luxury of being the person that knows your table better than anyone. So, I mean, it's a great way to expedite a lot of conversations and get back to the game. Like, that's what these are for.
No, I'm just did a hands check in chat.
Oh, okay. I'm ready. I'm ready. Who tried to fight?
Come on, Gnome. Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. And I love the idea of like unique and bespoke safety tools for the specific dynamics of your table. I think that's great. I think, Nor, you were the one who introduced me to the concept of the H card, which I love, because like now we use it at Transplainer, because you brought it up, because we're such a conflict driven channel in terms of the stories we tell. Like, so many of our characters like are sleeping with each other, or they backstab each other, or they're like long lost enemies. Right, like, and that tool has been great for us and our particular channel. In terms of, so I'm seeing some stuff in chat that's also really real about like also other reasons why folks might hesitate to use safety tools, in terms of like, some human brains being wired to perceive embarrassment as like a physical attack or like actual danger, and some folks with trauma or something fearing backlash for bringing things up. And I'm like, that's super real, like, for sure. Like, I am a confrontational person. That doesn't mean that during the confrontation, inside I'm not like secretly crying. Like, I'm the kind of person who will cry when I'm stressed, so I'll be like, so please don't do it. And I'll be like really angry, but crying, which is like such an odd thing to see. So I get that. Like, I have social anxiety, and I have a lot of like anxiety around, confrontation as well. I also, I challenge myself, and I do the work to actually like communicate with people when I am uncomfortable, because I recognize that my fear of confrontation and my social anxiety is valid. Those are like super valid reasons, not excuses to not use safety tools. You still have to use them. Like, even if it makes you uncomfortable, even if you're scared of it, you have to bring it up. I'm sorry, you do.
I had to,
like, or if you don't, you have to like be okay with the content continuing and recognize that it's like not necessarily anyone's fault.
I
right?
had
So
to
like
draw
that's
a line at a game that I was in the other day, and I realized like I'm like, I felt so terrible because I didn't want to be the person that ruined everybody's fun, because everybody really enjoyed what was happening. For some context, it was there was a little bit of mind control, loss of character agency that was happening at the table. And I'm realizing quickly that that's a big line that I've had stepped on. Like, I've got a line against gaslighting, and I'm going to add this into future games, is I've got a line against loss of character agency, because it doesn't feel it felt like people were also being like very actively antagonistic as a result of this not necessarily mind control, but they were being coerced by these cursed objects in this game. And I'm like, hey, can we dial that back a touch? I don't have any problems with how everybody was role playing. Y'all did that scene fantastically, but I'm realizing that this is a trigger for me that we might need to address and touch on a little bit, because I'm starting to feel a little hopeless here. And I seem to be the only one that's trying to fix things. And it felt like all the onus was on me to be the one to have to like it was a lot of pressure. And when we talked about it, it all sort of resolved like very like friendly and amicably. It felt like we grew a little bit closer together as a cast afterwards.
I have to say, my perspective on safety tools has been shaped a lot by something I saw Dylan say once, which is safety tools work. Safety tools work in two ways. One, you use them at the table and they make the table safer. Or two, you see how they react to the safety tools, and if it is negatively, you've dodged the bullet. See, it's working. If you use a safety tool and you get pushback for it, congratulations. The safety tool just shows you a table that you do not need to be at. One of the things that I really want to stress to anybody that takes in any content of mine is that not every table is going to be the table that you should sit at. Not everybody in the space is going to be your friend. Not everything is going to work out, and that's okay. That's kind of just the way of it. So if you pull the trigger and you use a safety tool and it's not respected, it's going to hurt in the moment, but I promise in the long run, you'll realize, wow, I'm very glad I got out of that game when I did. Because it's only going to get worse from there. If they can't even respect a safety tool, there's no hope for the table. Sorry.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, that's completely agreed with you, Noir. Like, give folks the chance to do the right thing, and if they don't, that's a lesson, right, for you. And you leave that stream, right? Anita, your story. So thank you for sharing that, first of all, and second of all, I'm glad that they listened. And it seems like they adjusted.
Yes, that's actually one of the things. Calibrated. Like afterwards, I was so apologetic. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like I feel like I ruined everybody's fun, and they're like, no, this is perfect because this gives us a chance to redirect the story. Like, your fun is more important than whatever we're doing at this table.
100, like I feel that 100%. And what you actually said, Anita, about like how then that kind of brought the cast closer, like because you brought it up, I think is something that we don't really talk about enough in this conversation about safety tools, which is it's often seen as this big scary thing, like, oh god, like I'm X-carding, I'm ruining everyone's fun, which is such a real fear, because I also feel that too. I'm like, damn, everyone else seems to be having fun going in, but I'm not. Like, maybe, you know, like I get that, I completely get that. But it is an opportunity for a cast to grow closer and become stronger, because being able to talk about conflict and handle conflict in a way that doesn't blow up and completely implode everything, is kind of like working out a muscle, right? Yes. You have to stress it a bit to grow it. And like a kind of normal stress, that leaves it a little sore in the morning, but then like you eat your vegetables and then that muscle gets a little bit bigger, is great. You know, what's dangerous is when you overexert the muscle. This metaphor is getting away from me, but like the idea, it's getting away from me, it's running, it's on its legs. But this idea of like, that's how I think of conflict. I think of conflict as me growing a muscle, right? And like, the rest and recovery part of conflict is important too, which is like the making up of the conflict, right? Like,
it's the aftercare.
Let's talk about it. Exactly. Let's have some aftercare. Let's talk about concrete steps that will happen to address to resolve this conflict, and then let's move forward from there, right? Like, all of these steps are necessary when it comes to flagging something for safety.
Heck yeah.
And it's an opportunity to grow closer as a cast. It really is.
I can't speak highly enough about Stars and Wishes as a safety tool. Like it perfectly adds structure to that, and it's fantastic. But one of the things that I wanted to say is for the folks that are hesitant to drop a safety tool. What I've noticed in my experience, and maybe you two can like speak to it as well if you've encountered this as well, is that generally if you're feeling like, oh my god, it's time to drop like an N or an X, you're not the only person at the table with that thought. In most of the time, people are just waiting for someone to go first. So I often ask myself, like, in that situation, I usually go, I'm going to drop this because I know somebody else wants to. And, like, that's how I have to think in order to get myself to do that. But it works. And I haven't been wrong yet, because after you drop the letter, like after a break or something, someone has always come up and gone, wow, that was really awkward, man. Thank you for doing that. So I don't know. Like, have you had that experience?
Absolutely. Actually, one of the safety tools safety procedures we use at Transplanar is what we call advocating for other people. We do believe that sometimes it can be easier to stand up for others than it is to stand up for yourself. So one part of the safety briefing we do for all of our players, for our session zeros is, now that we're all aware of everyone's lines and veils, if you're or like watching out for each other on cam, if you're noticing like something happening, like Connie describing something or whatever, like for example, like I could describe like a house burning down, right? And you're noticing that another player is like kind of sitting there, they look a little uncomfortable, but they're not saying anything. Even though you're fine with the fire, you could go, X, or you could type in chat, hey, can we move on from this? Right? And that's like a way to advocate for someone else. And we find that is used, which feels great because players then are like, oh, I get to stand up for someone, which is ironically sometimes much easier than standing up for yourself. So like,
it really is. It really, like,
yeah.
I don't know why that is, but like that's the thought process that I have to be in to go, okay, enough. Not for me, but for my friend.
Exactly. I think this might be, so I feel the same way, and I think it's because it's easier for some people to stand up for others than themselves because there could be a lack of a feeling of self-worth or a lack of a feeling of self-love, which people who struggle with self-love make some noise in chat, right? But I think there is something really powerful in being able to love yourself by loving other people, right? Yeah. And by recognizing the love that other people have for you. So that's just me being gay, though. That's just me being gay.
On this channel? No, I'm kidding.
Listen, last night I had one of my players in my Friday game make up stickers that said "assign gender by critical misses." And another one was, I
love that.
The other one was, oh crap, I gotta pull this up. I streamed on critical misses and all I got was a new set of pronouns.
Secret forbidden critical misses pronouns. I love that. I actually want to acknowledge something that someone put in chat, which is they say in the first couple arcs of Transplanar was the only time I've ever seen players actively X-card something in an AP, which really helped me get comfortable with using safety tools myself. A lot of APs edit safety tool moments out. So I want to acknowledge that, like, first of all, I'm happy to hear that those moments helped you get comfortable with using safety tools yourself. That's awesome. That is the best case scenario in like a viewer watching those moments happen, right? Like absolute best case scenario I could ask for. The other thing is so in our later arcs we do end up like editing some of those moments out because we switch to a pre-recording format and we just have edits and like background music and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And also, like, safety moments happened less consistently. They did still happen, and we did edit those out, but they did happen considerably less as I got to, like, know the players a bit more and also, like, grow as a GM myself. What I will say is, like, I come from, like, a live streaming background. We did switch to pre-recording for Transplanar, but we're going back to live stream for our second main campaign, and I'm fully prepared to, like, handle any sort of X card live on stream. Because I think for a GM, it's important to be flexible and to like be able to think kind of fast on your feet if you're being like X-carded live on stream, and also to be like a good MC, kind of like a good host of a stream, and to be able to gauge like, is this a let's go to a BRB screen moment because this seems like a big thing that we need to talk about, or is this a moment where we can just sort of like very quickly on cam like above the table be like, oh, you didn't like the fire? Can it be a haunting instead? And there are like, you know, ghosts coming out of the house instead of it burning down. And the player could be like, sure, that's fine. Okay, great. Let's go back into it. Right? Like knowing when to continue on with the stream and when to like take things kind of offline. I think
that's
is also
so
an important
cool and helpful
skill.
because that is, sorry to cut you off there. I think that's
No,
so
please
cool
go
and
ahead.
helpful because that is being able to do it on the fly is a talent in itself, and being able to do it on a fly in such a way that people see it happening on screen is good and useful because it does bring that sort of normalization to safety tools and scene directions, where people actually see it in use and then see it and be like, hey, okay, cool, that's how that works. Now I can implement this because you're leading by example. And I think that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's nice when APs sort of like keep that moment in, and when it does happen, and like people can see, the audience can see like, oh, that was not a big deal. Right? You know, someone's just like, hey, I didn't love that X. I didn't really enjoy that, and then we have a conversation like normal people, and then we move on.
Yeah.
Right? Like it can be as low key as you want it to be. Right?
Depending on how like specific the X card is or what exactly the line was crossed. Usually what we do here on this channel at least is we'll cut to break. We'll solve whatever the problem is in as few questions as possible so that we avoid triggering anybody further. And geez, everybody, what the heck is going on? Why are you...
What? What are y'all
Sphinx
doing?
Gifted 5 subs.
Thank you for the
chat.
gift subs.
Thank you so much for this hype train that's going on, y'all. But we
safety tools get them hyped.
Yeah, safety tools is getting people hyped. But yeah, it's but it's so important, I think. I've lost my train of thought completely because my brain is stew. But we try to solve the problem with like just as few questions as possible, just so that we can continue on with narrative. And if we need to stop, that's cool too. If we need to do a full stop, I need to come back by myself on camera and just say, hey everybody, we're actually just going to take a little bit to reevaluate as a cast, but we're going to end the stream here. Thank you so much for joining us. Like, that's cool too. Because again, people's comfort is more important than your content.
So I had a very interesting experience.
Does that get the Italian head going?
I had a very interesting experience when I was doing one of the like Avatar games when I was part of the program for Magpie. And I explained safety tools to, like, I was basically playing with a bunch of jocks that were Avatar fans. And I was explaining safety tools, and like they were a little weary about it. And then I explained it to them like this, and this explanation is kind of always stuck in my head. And I haven't really shared it before, but safety tools are just penalties in the same way that you have them in sports. So once I got them comfortable with that, they were calling the...
I love the bro sports metaphor. I'm imagining like a group of musclehead jocks being like, "What, safety tools? That sounds like it's for girls." And Nora being like, "No, man, it's like sport ball." They're like, "Yeah,
it's like when you do something wrong, you have to sit in the penalty box."
That's hilarious. It's making me think of the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend song of like the sport metaphor. I don't know if this reference is gonna land for anyone, but like the sports metaphor one where the two ex-boyfriends of the main character are like bonding over sport metaphors. Anyway.
Flag on the play. Red card, yellow card.
I promise you, one of the dudes was like, "That's an end, buddy. You didn't ask the rest of the group if we wanted to do this." I was like,
I love that.
That's not how it's supposed to be used.
No, listen.
But okay.
I love that. tailor the safety tool for your table. You were recognizing that standard safety tool speak wasn't working, and you adjusted, and they used it. Right? That's a huge win for you. That's huge.
Calling the penalties from now on.
Flag on the play.
Flag on the play. I didn't like that.
You are very considerate to the cleric.
The penalty box in TTRPGs. You go into the waiting room and you stay there until you think about what you did.
Did you PvP without a hands check? That's 5 minutes.
5 minutes in the waiting room.
You've lost your cam privileges. Turning that off. Oh my god.
Oh my god, they had the fight in hand, but there was a hands call, and now they moved the ball.
That's a game misconduct. You're out of the stream.
Oh my god.
Wait, did you misgender somebody? You're out of here!
God, I love that. I know nothing about sports, and I love that.
Your pronouns are now was, were. Get out of here.
Oh my god.
I think now would be a perfect time to take a quick break.
Yeah, we've been at this for 2 hours, everybody.
I'm useless at the thought of like a Bria in full umpire gear. You're out of here!
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We will see you all very soon. Thank you so much for stopping by.
No GMs, only referees.
5, everybody. All right. Very clear. And we are back. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
I also put there's a new command in chat, so if you type !cat, it does tell you a little bit about Watson.
I didn't know you made a command for him. So hello everybody and welcome back to the second half of Morning Ritual. Hey, where you going, bud? Where you going, buddy? Which is the dark roast I'm being stared at, where we talk about more serious topics, but honestly, we just say that we're gonna talk about the same stuff. We already kind of dipped into a little bit of what we talk about in the second half with Petty Primetime. So I think now we're just gonna jump straight into one of my favorite bits, which is TTRPG Confessional. If you feel like you have any particularly but if you feel like you have any particularly unhealthy habits at the table or things that you would like to change, this is where you confess, and we will give you your penance, and you can move on. I always like to lead these segments by example. Did she come and take the cat? Yes.
I didn't take him. He came to the bedroom door crying.
So sorry. So I am going to confess. All right, here's my confession. Okay.
Confess your sins.
I have agreed to do a one-shot, but I was caught wholly unprepared by how horny my players are.
That feels like less of a confession for yourself and more of a you're confessing on behalf of your horny players. Like you're
that
in the
feels more
booth
like
and you're
player
saying,
shaming than anything.
Father,
No,
forgive me, my players have sinned.
Here's my confession. I don't know how to appease these horny motherfuckers in this game. It's a heist game. I don't know what to do.
Clearly, you have to make every NPC they encounter hot as fuck. The guards they're supposed to get around, make them so hot, your players cannot resist the temptation of completely ignoring the heist and sleeping with the guards.
Okay,
That's clearly the only solution.
I'll take that as penance. I picked the lock with my penis. God damn it.
Not the lock-picking penis, Vanna.
That is a man written by a man.
All right. Anita, do you have a penance for me? I have to make hot NPCs.
But you need to make very hot NPCs, but you need to make at least a few of them ace.
I love
evil.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at the very least demisexual, so they have to romance them. They gotta work for it.
How am I supposed to pretend to make people work for it when I'm a hoe in real life?
This is a hilarious problem you found yourself in.
Like it was just one of those like, hey everybody, I'm gonna be GMing the game. Here's what the game is about, and like just let's let everybody get to know each other. And then it just got horny, and I was like, oh no, what do I do?
Introduce X's. Introduce player characters X's.
Yes.
Yes.
Bring the drama.
That is killing me in the chat. Not the caption saying I'm a hole in real life. Oh. So would anyone else like to confess today? Please?
I did my confession last week about my lack of prep, and I did take your advice under advisement.
Mm-hmm.
I did do a modicum of prep for last night's session.
That's not what your penance was at all. You're supposed to have the whole session planned out.
Sure did.
Did you mean to tell me you come in here in these hollowed halls admitting that you did not do your penance? This is a first.
I did.
We've never had this.
I'm a repeat sinner. I'm a repeat offender. I don't prep.
All right,
it is session to session, baby.
Your penance is to write a whole session out in advance.
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it. And now Connie also gets the chance to give you another penance on the same sin. You see what happens?
Okay, so here's the penance that you have to do. You have to write a monologue in advance. I don't care how long it is. I don't care who says it, but you have to prep a monologue. That is my penance to you.
Please don't use the word raw dog in my chat. No, you're fine. Let me need a raw dog DMing.
I love our community.
That's your sibling.
Yeah, it is. Gotti, do you
Okay,
have any?
I'm gonna write a villainous monologue for my BBE.
Yes.
All right. Do you have any sins that you would like to confess to?
So sins imply that I've been doing this secretly and furtively. Not so. I do this loudly and proudly, but it is still a sin. Which is, first of all of like I am incapable of playing a character that is not hot. I can't do it. I've never played a character that wasn't hot. So that's my confession. My other one is there are 3 kinds of characters I play. I've pigeonholed myself into 3 archetypes. And I would love to break out of them. The first is a huge, muscular, emotionally unavailable butch lesbian. The second one is a twink, a gay little slut guy. He, they, most likely they, them, perhaps even a they, she. Usually a bard, kind of svelte and lithe, with top surgery scars and just very hot. In that way, androgynous and effeminate. And the third is a horrible, horrible gremlin. Just some guy, like a line cook, right? Like a line cook. Real greasy, real gritty, but very fuckable. So those are the 3 archetypes, the 3 kinds of PCs I play. That's my confession. That's my range.
Okay, I've got a penance for you. your next character, you have to she's all that it, which is they have to be hot secretly. Until the party reveals that they're actually hot.
Until they take off their glasses? Oh my God.
That's right. That is right. You have to have a hidden hottie that the party has to discover is actually hot.
You make the line cut gremlin hot, but like secretly hot.
Damn.
And let their hair down.
They're just covered in so much grease. But the instant they take a shower, it's over for everyone. The instant they get dressed, the instant they become clean.
The
wow.
90s movie Hidden Hottie.
Okay. I'll play a hidden hottie. That will be the next archetype I play. I'll play a hidden hottie.
I can't wait to see. You got a pin it, Anita?
Ooh, make that muscle bound, emotionally unavailable character. Make her emotionally available. Make her like almost too emotionally available.
Wait, hold on.
Let's make her clingy. Let's make some overly attached girlfriend. Let's make some overly attached girlfriend drama.
You know I'm gonna swing hard to the other side of the fence and make this woman a yandere.
Yeah.
You know she's gonna be like...
That is everything Noir's ever wanted.
Okay, I will gladly do that. Higher education fans, Stag's new arc is she's gonna become like... This is not gonna make sense to anyone who doesn't watch higher education. She's gonna become like X. She's gonna start using her axe for evil. Anyway.
Overly attached muscle girlfriend.
Yes. Yes, I will do that.
Oh. I feel so validated.
Oh.
I'm useless right now.
Nora's wanted nothing more than a yandere girlfriend.
Listen, it's who does it? I don't understand why y'all don't see what I see.
I'm with Noir. Listen, because I feel like that trope is so often like a more effeminate girl, right? Like a more like, you know, feminine woman. So the idea of like a huge muscular butch yandere, I'm really into that, actually.
Oh, fuck yeah. I want nothing more than...
We've added 2 new archetypes to the rotation.
None of you are free from sin in chat. She kills people. Can't you see that? She kills people for you. She's a killer. She's a murderer.
Oh,
she's a sadist.
Let's explain what yandere is to Vanna.
I'll pull up the definition.
I'm gonna Google it. Yeah. It's easier if you just Google it. A yandere is a character, most often female and in anime, who becomes violently possessive of a love interest. Violently possessive. And it's usually juxtaposed with a very cutesy and very feminine character design. So like a pink-haired, skirt-wearing girl who's like, oh my god, I'm really into you! And then like her eyes go dead, and they're like she stabs someone and blood splashes onto her face, and she's like, and no one else can have you.
Did you talk to Senpai? You shouldn't have talked to Senpai.
Yeah, like very, if you just Google it. The main character in main female love interest in Mirai Nikki, Future Diary, is a yandere. Is a great example of a yandere.
Mm-hmm.
Doki Doki vibes.
Yes, big Doki Doki vibes.
Stab.
See, who says you can't learn something by watching Morning Rick?
Yeah, Korra's cousin from the second season of Legend of Korra. I think she was, but she had it was more because it was voiced by Aubrey Plaza.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The twins.
Vanna, I am not explaining yaoi to you.
Vanna, that's
good
bait.
And well.
That's bait. Vanna knows what, that's bait.
That's
you
bait.
Cannot. Nope.
Have we had Vanna on? We're gonna have to get
Vanna on. show or explain.
So the next thing that we always do here on the Dark Roast, we usually do this after the bad guy, but I'm gonna have us do it beforehand.
Oh yeah, Noir wasn't there for Vanna's episode. We'll have to bring Vanna back for that. Because we had Bree guesting because you were in Los Angeles.
That's right. That's right. Well, I hope you're ready to be a 2-time champ or guest. But the question I was going to ask is, we do community spotlight. So if there's been anybody in the space that has made you feel particularly welcome, someone that you feel like should get a little bit more shine than they're getting, just anything at all where you just want to we just want to share the love, spread the love. This is your chance to do that. So you got anybody in mind?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to shout out my partner, my dramaturg, my lore keeper, my producer, C. Thomas, C as in the ocean, SEA. They are on Twitter at PieSharpArt. That's P-I, sharp as in a sharp knife, and art as in the thing we make. PieSharpArt, they're an incredible artist, illustrator, and also a phenomenal AP performer, as well as a very skilled editor and dramaturg. And I think more APs should use dramaturgs. If you don't know what that is, it's kind of like a lore keeper, and like an assistant director. Like they're basically someone who like watches your show, like works with your players to like help facilitate the character creation process, and make sure that the player's performance is elevating the themes they want to elevate, and is also like contributing to the story as a whole, if you're working with the dramaturg on a more consistent basis. Because of the reason why The Second Stranger is as narratively coherent and compelling as it is because of the immense work that C puts in dramaturging, being that liaison between the players and myself as a GM, and also like helping me with aspects of world building, and coming up, bouncing off ideas with me and whatnot. They're also a fantastic editor, so like for any kind of writing too. Less so sort of like not so much in terms of like copy editing or whatnot, but in terms of like developmental editing, like looking at your work, being like, what are the main themes? Okay, and how well is your work accomplishing those themes with the goals you have in mind as the writer? So like if you have any like TTRPG projects going on and you're in need of a developmental editor, like less so in terms of like game mechanics, more so about like world setting, or if you have like a novel or anything, like they're great. They're wonderful. They are incredible, understated, very like, they're kind of like a sleeper hit in the TTRPG community, I would say. Like, they're in a lot of shows right now, and they've been on a lot of channels. And they, I think, deserve a lot more shine, and a lot more, like people eyes on their work and eyes on their performance. And that's how I feel about C. They are,
heck yeah.
They are my little, behind every Connie is a C. Behind every great little Connie is a greater little C, is what I think. So, throw them some love.
A great big C.
We've gone ahead and put their link, their Twitter profile link in the chat. Please go ahead and show some love. Also, I just noticed that they're at 1,667. If we can't at least get to 1,669, I'm gonna be disappointed in everybody in this chat. So let's go ahead and show some love. I'll put the link in one more time.
Woo!
I'm blushing. I'm
kidding. They're at 68 now. They're so close.
Hell yeah!
So close. We just need one more new follower.
Wait, let me see if I'm following on this account.
And do you have anybody else you'd like to have in your community spotlight?
Oh, so many. Every single member 69! Of the Translator cast. 69!
69! Nice!
Yes. Yes, we've hit it. Obviously Vanna, who's in chat already. We love Vanna. Mm-hmm. Throw Vanna a follow. Vanna's an incredible streamer and the GM for Higher Education, which is a Strixhaven game that C and I are in. It's such a great game. The campaign, we just wrapped up season 1. So, toss Vanna some love. Vanna in chat. She is hilarious. And looking for love. So if you think you're good enough for Vanna, you should Don't hit her up, please. I'm not gonna, because that's weird. I'm sorry. I should not have put a call to action right now, but give her a follow on Twitch and on Twitter.
Please follow and explain what yaoi is.
Yes, mansplain yaoi to Vanna, except don't actually do that. And every single transplanter cast member too. All 8 of them. This is gonna be a challenge for Anita, because I'm gonna say a bunch of handles real fast right now.
Okay.
So of course, C, we already did C. C is one of the cast members.
Yep.
Max Gua plays Dewey Quirk, our Aarakocra artificer. That is, Starchmonger on Twitter. So starch as in the, ingredient, and monger as in like fishmonger. Starchmonger, just smash it together. Max, Erica, who plays Vasanti Noxerzo, our elf sorcerer. She is Erica New Girl on Twitter. That is Erica and then New Girl, like a brand new girl. We also have Valiant Dorian.
Jesse's. I'm sorry, I hate myself. I'll stop talking now.
You're all good. Then we have Valiant Dorian, who plays Voska, our Yenti bard. That's correct, Valiant Dorian. And we also have Humna Shahid, who plays Duran Cotter, our Dragonborn rogue artificer bard, who is Shahid _. So that's an H and SHAHID and then an underscore on Twitter. And we also have Quinn B. Rodriguez, who plays Sitlali, our changeling cleric / paladin, who is Quintastic _ and Quinn with 3 N's. So QUINNN tastic _ on Twitter. And we also have Dare to Dream, Dare to Dream RPG. We love Dare. Plays Gentle, our monk, our Triton monk. And of course we have Austin, Sailor Scout Austin on Twitter. It's Sailor SCT Austin on Twitter. And I think that's everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, that's everyone, including C. Yep. For our main cast.
Heck yeah.
All these people. Most of them are people of color too, and all of them are trans.
Hell yeah. Please show the love. I'm loving how like unified everybody is in their banner too. Like,
yeah. It's a real
we love
group
the second
effort
stranger.
with like making sure that you're representing the brand like in and out of game. It's very impressive.
Oh yeah, I'm just noticing every single one of us has a second stranger banner. Oh, that's so cute, even though the show ended. Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, the cast members were like, I don't want to change my banner yet. You know, like backstage. Everyone really loves the show, which I'm so grateful for.
Heck yeah. Well, you're putting on an amazing show. And I kind of wanted, before we get into like the rest of our sessions, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit, because you did mention that you wanted to talk a little bit about your approach to world building and story first GMing. Would you be able to sort of elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So we call our show non-colonial and anti-orientalist in how we play, which means that we did start the campaign using D&D. And we do end the campaign using D&D, but I would say it's like we've homebrewed it to hell and back. It's basically unrecognizable, to fit our needs, right? To like fit the cinematic and narrative and roleplay focused stories that we enjoy telling and that we want to tell. So from like the ground up, in terms of non-colonial and anti-orientalist world building, we have thrown the Karagen rules out of the window for Transplanar. So our approach to race specifically and ancestry and whatnot, species now I think is the working term, which I have feelings about and I dislike greatly for 1D&D. We've thrown that completely out the window, and basically in Andake, which is a homebrew world that the Second Stranger is set in, there are all kinds of fantasy races and peoples of all appearances found in all numbers across the land. So there, like any kingdom has any number of whatever races that there are in existence, and race is a aesthetic choice. So if you want to play Triton because you think it's cool to have gills and blue skin, that is the reason, right? Or like sometimes it's very gender to play a half-orc, right? Like you just want to play a muscular half-orc mommy, right? Which is something I love to do all the time. Hello, Mercy. So making it clear to my players that the race you choose for your character, you know, we have a changeling, we have an elf, right? We have a drow, Aasimar, stuff like that, is purely aesthetic. It's just based on like looks, right? And vanity, for lack of a better term. In terms of what you can do, like ASIs, as well as racial feats and languages are completely divorced from the race you pick. So I have a homebrew system where, everyone gets to have 3, I call them like special, powers, which are essentially a list of all of the racial feats there are. So this is stuff like stone cunning, or dark vision, or flying, speed, or like, fire breath, right? Like a breath weapon. But all of these are completely divorced from race, and you can pick any 3 that you want. That's it. Pick any 3. And your size, you can just decide if you want, to be small or medium. That's it. You can be a small tiefling, a medium gnome. Doesn't matter to me, right? It's just completely just based on looks. And languages are not racial, so there's no Orcish, there's no Elvish. They are all completely based on culture, which is based on my homebrew world. So if you grew up in the Kingdom of Tulong, you probably are fluent in 2. Right? And if you've traveled a lot, you might be fluent in 3 different languages, right? You can always forego one of these special traits to pick up proficiency in another language. So that's kind of how I handle, non-colonial, anti-Orientalist world building when it comes to Cairgen. There's a lot of considerations when it comes to greater world building as well. For instance, we're very proud of the fact that all of the nations of Endake and the kingdoms and various factions are modeled off of various Asian mythologies and cultural touchstones. So we have cultures, fantasy made-up cultures that are influenced by real-world cultures, specifically of like Japanese, Chinese, Hawaiian, Mongolian, some Russian influence. A lot of Asian and some Pacific Islander cultures. But the influence is not one-to-one. It's very much just like drawing upon some like important touchstones of those various cultures and sort of like making it our own, but still paying homage very explicitly, both at and above the table to those places, in the real world. And non-colonial in the sense that like the world of Endake has never been, is not, and will never be colonized, and will also not play with those as like conflict points or plot points. So there's no evil empire that's like seeking to absorb all the other kingdoms under its banner. There's no like weird first contact narratives, you know, of like, this species has never been seen before and we're gonna go there and learn about them. Like there's no Atlantis metaphors here, right? Nothing like that. And in terms of anti-Orientalist, as an Asian person, like I, in my world building, I actively not just like avoid Orientalist tropes, I actively try to like, debunk them, and invert them and question them, right? So this idea that like basically every single NPC in Endake is a person of color, you know, is like Black, Asian, Latin, what have you, and that there are no white people in Endake. There are no cis people in Endake. There are no straight people in Endake. The only white person in Endake is a character called Adam, and that is because he is literally a man from Earth 2016, and who got transported to this fantasy world. That's like the only, that's like a whole thing. Like that's the only character who like could conceivably be white, and even so, I don't even know if Adam's white. Like I haven't made it canon. I've described him as having pale skin, but he could just be like a sunlight-starved, like, Asian tech bro. Like, who knows? Who knows, right? So, his last name is Smith, but we'll see. So that's kind of what I mean by, like, a non-colonial, anti-Orientalist approach to world building. And generally speaking, like, from a narrative standpoint, it was important to me in the world and setting doc that I sent out to my original 4 players and then expanded into a bigger doc that I would send out to the new like 4 and 5 players I invited on later on in Transplaner's lifespan, that the doc would contain really juicy hooks that they could make their characters around, especially for like the 2 sets of one-shot miniseries we did with various trans folks of color in the space. Our Shoot Your One-Shot series. So we did one back in 2021 and we did one in 2022.
And that was a really successful endeavor, by the way. That was really cool that you guys did.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important to us that Transplaner, we always like, we have roots in the community and that we like try to highlight, you know, people who are maybe overlooked in the space, marginalized folks in the space as much as we can, that we have capacity to do. Which is also why it's important to me that the main cast of Transplaner are I kind of see us as kind of like a little bit of like underdogs and like a bit like disruptors in the space a bit. Because like when we first started out, we had no connections to anyone in the space, and we just sort of like clawed our way up from indiedom, and we still are. And like it's important to me that we keep that authentic, right? Because I know there are like wonderful, really talented, like bigger names in the space, many of whom I have had the absolute honor and privilege of sharing a table with. And I would love, and I'm manifesting a collaboration with those folks, like again and again and again in the future. As for Transplaner itself, like for the main cast in particular, it's important to me that we stick to our roots as kind of like underdogs and in the representation of the cast makeup and whatnot. That does feel important to me. But that aside, so like the setting doc itself, like every aspect of like, for example, like the blurb that I have for each kingdom, right? Like for the kingdom of Tulong, I'll put in like, Tulong is known for having a nation of very adept necromancers. And then the immediate next section will be the Court of Ravens, which is where necromancy is outlawed and seen as sacrilege. So like the world building aspects that talk to each other and generate conflict by nature of existing, right? So then someone could be like, I want to play someone who used to be a really devout priestess of the Raven Queen, but is now like questioning her place and her faith and is best friends with the disgraced crown prince of Tulong, which is juicy. Right? And like the kind of world building details I create allow for that to happen. That's an important part of what I mean by a narrative GM. In every step of like every kind of prep I do, both in terms of the setting doc, as well as the NPCs I create, as well as the actual sessions I run, that there is like a tie both to characters' backstories and to like the greater world itself, and that the world itself generates fiction, that the world itself is a story engine, that there's things moving in the background of the campaign, even though the campaign is the main focus. So I think something I enjoy doing and that I think I'm quite good at is creating player buy-in from session 0. Like making sure that all characters are rooted in the reality of the world and have ties to in-world touchstones. So like we have the disgraced crown prince of Tulong in our party. We have someone who was a former priestess of the Raven Queen in the court. We have someone who is a traveling bard from the commune of Morose who falls in love with the champion of Nabal. We have someone who is a runaway employee from the Uhanahi Research Laboratory who's trying to get back to his daughters. And all of these characters couldn't have happened outside of Endake, right? And that's important to me as well as a narratively focused GM. I think that like having characters that are inherently tied to the reality of your world is uniquely enmeshed in your setting, and the things that generate conflict and matter to your setting are crucial in being able to pull on those characters for plot threads later on.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, would you ever consider releasing a setting guide?
I'm so glad you asked, Anita. Ooh, yes, I am. That is something that I would love to work toward in the, not necessarily the immediate future, but I will say the near future. Like I would love to be able to like kickstart or crowdfund a setting guide for Endake, like a beautiful hardcover book, and like, pay all of my former cast members to write blurbs about their characters as playable NPCs. I have a lot of plans. It's all very much in like a brainstorm stage, but I would not be surprised if in the next year or so, like second Stranger setting and Endake setting book, might start becoming a thing. I'm putting it out there. I do want that to happen. Yes.
Manifest it.
Heck yeah, I definitely want to play in the world of Endake. But you answered a question that I was gonna ask, and I think it's pretty cool how you did that. Which is, I was gonna ask, do you ever feel limited or restricted by the standards that you set up at the beginning of your game? Kind of like, how Smallville kind of got a little bit restrained with the no capes, no flights, no tights rule at the end. Like, is there ever anything where you're like, I want to do that, but that kind of is contrary to the pillars that I set up as the foundation of this world?
That's a really interesting question, and truthfully, no. Because I think I come from a screenwriting background, critical race studies. And also like a poetry and just general fantasy writing background. So I am experienced and interested in the idea of like every line of world building I do is supposed to expand the universe instead of close it in. So expansive world building asks questions and leaves interesting hooks to be explored in game, whereas closed door world building answers questions and limits creativity. I would say a lot of closed door world building can be honestly found in D&D source books. For example, the closed door world building of being like, Drow are slavers. They're from the Underdark. They worship Lolth, and the reason why they're evil is because Lolth is evil, and male Drow are like this. And some creative players might be like, I'm gonna take that and turn it on its head. But you're always kind of working against the grain instead of with it. Whereas an open door way of approaching that kind of, first of all, I just don't do any sort of species oriented world building. I'm not like Drow are like this, Tiefling are like this, Orcs are like that. I think that's really, first of all, kind of racist, and second of all, really boring. That's just, at this point in my, like, world building journey, that kind of world building it just bores me. I think there's so much more we could do when we think beyond race as a deciding factor for culture and for any sort of story engine or intrigue. So that, first of all, I wouldn't even say that. Like, I wouldn't even say Drow are like this, or they're all like that, or whatever. But let's say there is a faction in your world that I don't put slavery in my games either. So see, like, that's even a moot point. Let's say there's a faction that are bloodthirsty mercenaries, and they're sellswords, and they sell their talent to the highest bidder, and they don't care who they hurt. Okay? Let's say there's a faction like that. I think a kind of closed door world building approach to that, which would limit people, would be like, being very tied to and establishing, this is the leader of that mercenary faction. This is what happened to them to make them that way. Because I just don't do closed door world building, so it's hard for me to come up with an example. Because that's actually open door.
It's like saying that there's no way out of that mercenary group once you're indoctrinated into it, and you will always be like that.
Yeah, kind of. Like, essentialist, right? Essentialist yes. World building. Like, if you are part of this faction, you think like this, you look like this, and you operate like this. These are the tools at your disposal, and you cannot move outside of it.
This is so, for example, if a player was like,
exactly. For instance, if a player was like, oh, I kind of want to play like a character that used to be from this faction, but isn't anymore. But if the rules of the world are like, actually, they kill everyone who leaves their faction, so you can't be from that faction, would limit it. Whereas, like, a kind of open door approach would be like, sure, but are you cool if that faction sends assassins after you during the course of the campaign because they want to tie up loose ends? Then that's interesting, right? But a closed door approach would just be like no, that's just not how the world works, sorry. Or like, no, I don't think you can make a character like that because that's just not how it works in my world, sorry, right?
I'm gonna have to steal a seat at one of your tables because you are speaking my language. You mentioned like closed door explanations and how WotC has a tendency to do that with D&D. I don't think that they take their own world building all that seriously. Like, and I mean, like, they have really interesting hooks. Like, one of my favorite races in D&D is the Shatterkai. They've got an amazing backstory, and I think the community or the space as a whole has a genuine intrigue with the Raven Queen, and they're inherently tied to the Raven Queen. And the Raven Queen is neither good nor evil, she just is. And so they have a bunch of people that are tethered to someone that is neither good nor evil, they just are. There's so much story juice on how to reconcile them, and it kind of feels like they put them in a book, it's out, and then they just left it lie. And like, I love very much how, like, you're talking about something like this and breathing life into it. Like, I would love to see how you handle the Shatterkai, because what's an open door approach to something that ambiguous look like? It could be anything. That's the kind of thing that gets me excited about playing with people that really care about story Like it's just what could happen. Like that's why we played, for the what if, you know?
Exactly. And getting to explore that. So what's interesting about that you bring up the Shadowkai, my understanding of them are that they're basically like shadow elves who are like native to the Shadowfell and have a relationship with the Raven Queen. So how I would approach that, because I don't do any sort of race-based world building, I would not have a race of people, of elves known as Shadowkai. Instead, I would treat it kind of like Aasimar heritage, which is I treat being an Aasimar similar to being like a werewolf. It's something that is like interposed, overlaid on top of you. So like if you're an Aasimar, that means you've been touched by divinity in some way. You were either born with it, or you were blessed with it, or you were cursed with it, right? It's either in your bloodline, like someone in your family was a literal angel, or like they were blessed by a god, right? Or something like that, and that's why you're an Aasimar. And how it manifests is up to the player. I would probably treat Shadowkai like that. Like someone who was touched by death, marked by the Raven Queen in some way, either because they bear a curse in their bloodline from their family, like an ancestor defiled a grave or did something terrible, or because they themselves did something, or because fate is just like, fuck this guy in particular, right? Like, I'm gonna make you like look like you're covered in shadows all the time and like be haunted by like whisperings from the beyond, right? So that's probably how I would integrate Shadowkai into Andake. But no one's ever wanted to play one before, or anything like that. So I've never had to necessarily homebrew its way into Andake, but that's probably how I'd handle it. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So we're winding
two more
down.
Questions before we have to go, I think. Right?
Yep. So I'm gonna hit us with, if you've been in the TTRPG space for long enough, you've probably had the displeasure of playing with that guy. That guy is somebody that is a veritable black hole of fun at the table. Someone that if you yeeted them into the sun, your experience would increase tenfold. So, Connie, do you have a that guy story for us?
I do. I'm not gonna name names. So I have made it a very active, proactive, one might say, choice to only really sit at tables that are majority, or at the very least 50% people of color, unless it is with like a channel runner or people that I know, or if it's like for an important charity event or something like that. Like there are some exceptions I'll make to that rule, but I usually make it a point of like, it's just what I do. I cannot be the only person of color at the table. Like, absolutely not. So one of the exceptions I made was for this one particular one shot. I was the only person of color. Everyone else was white. I had made an exception. I was like, okay, like, let's see. It was fine. That guy was this cis white dude who, like, the whole time I was like, okay, whatever. Like, you're doing an accent. Okay, fine. Like, fine. Do your British accent. Fine. Right? Like, whatever. Fine. And part of the conceit was that we were all playing paladins. And this was my first time playing a paladin. But I, like, I read up on it and I was like, oh, fun. I'm just gonna take this and do whatever, right? Like, I'm gonna play this little paladin guy. And so paladins have two different kinds of smites, right? They have like the smite that they get with their class, and they can also do a smite, like they can spend a spell slot to like also do like an additional smite or something like that. And the die for those smites are different. I think the class-based smite die is like a D8 or something, and then there's like a D10 for the it's like something like that, right? The die size is like there's a 1 die difference, okay? And I was doing like someone else who was not either me or that guy, because we're all playing paladins. It was also kind of their first time playing paladin, I think. And they were like, okay, I want to try to smite this character. Oh, I don't know what die that is. And I was like, oh, I think that's a D8. Because they were like looking for their dice and it was kind of slowing down combat, right? So I was just like, I suggested like, I think it's a D8 on our sheet. And that guy was like, no, it's not. It's a D10. And I was like, oh, okay. huh, okay. I was like, oh, maybe I am wrong, right? And they were like, oh, okay. Well, something like that.
You were right.
Yep. So the first, I was right. So that person was like, oh, okay. So they rolled, I think it was actually, the other way, like they rolled with a smaller die or something. They were like, oh, okay. So, they rolled. And then I was like, So I looked at my character sheet, like another turn happened. I looked at my character sheet and I saw that I was actually right. And I was like, oh, usually I don't really care, but I think in this situation, they actually scaled down. It was supposed to be a D10, like for the other kind of smite, but they scaled down to a D8 or something. So like the next time it became my turn, I was like, oh, I just wanted to flag that I think it actually is like a D10 or something, like, or whatever I said. I basically was like, I think what I said was actually right, and I just want to make sure that all of us know because we're all playing paladins, right?
Right.
And this guy was like, oh, okay. Like, was clearly very annoyed at me for bringing this up, and like, kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was just like, whatever, it's a one shot, whatever the fuck. I was like, I don't care, like, whatever the fuck, I'm just gonna play my little goblin paladin, right? And then later in the combat, when it was like my turn or something, like I wanted to do the other kind of smite. I was like, okay, I wonder if I can bonus action and then smite. I was like figuring it out, and I was like, okay, and this time I messed it up. I made a mistake. I was like, oh, I think this is a D10 when it was actually a D8 or something like that. And he was like, no, he literally, okay, this is verbatim. He was like, no, it's a D8. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, huh. And I was like thinking, because he was wrong last time. So I was like thinking, and then he was like, I just looked it up. I'm right, you're wrong. He like literally said, I'm right, you're wrong. And I'm like, dude, you're like 30. Like, what? And it was such a weird, like, dick measuring, pissing contest moment that I'd never experienced at a table before. Because let me be clear, the way I was approaching it, I felt like I wasn't being condescending. I was just trying to advocate for the other character, and I was just confused, But he seemed to have taken me correcting him really personally when I hadn't meant it personally, right? And then he was just like, literally said the words, I'm right, you're wrong. And I was sitting here like, are we back in preschool? Like on the playground? It was very like kind of sing-songy too. Like, I'm right, you're wrong. And I'm like, okay. And like we took another like break at that time, and I remember going up to my partner to see, being like, I really don't like this table. Like, I'm not having a good time. There's this dick at the table. Everyone is white. It's super weird. There's other vibes that I'm really not enjoying. And they were like, you should just leave. You should just abandon the stream. So I was like, yeah, I'll say I have to leave early, and I left early, and I just did not have a good time. It was just like, honestly, it was not, again, not gonna name names. He's a pretty big D&D creator on TikTok. He's pretty big. Has a good number of followers. And I'm just like, this dude's a dick. I do not like him. This dude's an asshole. He's one of the people that I mentioned that like, I'll just block, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, Vanna says, cishet white dudes hate being corrected or bested in their mind. It's true, because they take gentle corrections as a challenge.
I was like, dude, I was not trying to like challenge you. You were wrong. Right? And I was wrong later, which is fine too, but like, he made it super weird.
I really did just say leave the stream.
Yeah, she did. She was like, just leave the stream.
Just go.
With an excuse, and I was like, okay. I was just not having fun, and it was going on for a really long time. And I didn't like it.
I do have to say, well, that's one of the attributes that I have seen in quite a few tabletop personalities that have a massive following, is an inability to accept being wrong or to apologize. That dude owed you an apology. That's not how you treat somebody at the table. This is communal storytelling, and if you're trying to clarify the rules for everybody else, that's not a challenge. That's not anything. And the thing is, you probably wouldn't get a sorry, even if you were like, hey, that was a dick move. Which I just don't hang around people that can't apologize. That's why
I don't hang around people that can't be checked.
Exactly. Especially if they love, especially if they love checking. Like that dude liked telling you I'm right, you're wrong, but hated when you were like, hey, I think there was a mistake. That's somebody that can dish it out but not take it. Fuck that guy.
Yep. I did not, honestly, like, it was such a small thing. It wasn't like an act of bigotry or anything. Honestly, the fact that I was the only person of color there was an act of bigotry, but that aside, it was just like, I don't know.
That wasn't
like,
even a
you're completely
microaggression.
right.
That was just an aggression.
He was just being like a dick for no reason. And like, he didn't even think, so the thing about that, Nora, is like, for an apology to have happened, he would have had to recognize that what he did was kind of dickish. And I don't think that even registered for him. You know, like, it just wasn't, it was so obvious to me that he was not, like, he exacted a kind of glee in saying that I was wrong, right? Which was just so weird to me. Just a weird way to play a game.
I bet he'd realize he was dickish if he had to spend 5 in the penalty box.
Yeah, in the penalty box with him.
And we're going to get through this last little bit real quick because I know you got to get out of here. There is, speaking of 5, if you could play with any 5 people in any system and you get to choose the GM, what are you playing? Who are you playing with?
I would GM. Because I love to GM. Obviously, this is so hard.
This is the punishment question.
This is so hard. Yeah, this is a punishment question. Oh my god. With so many people. I want to play with so many people. But this is like a fantasy collection of people.
Okay?
I mean,
some people just literally said they're best friends. I want to play with my best friends.
Well, yeah, okay, then I want to play with the friends that I'm closest with. I would love to play in person. People who would be so fun to play in person with. My partner, so C would absolutely have a seat at my table. Yes, please, 100%. I would want to play with Haley Williams of Paramore. So I've loved, C knows this and is rolling their eyes right now. Oh my god. Little Miss Haley Williams. I would absolutely love to GM her. I would have so much fun.
It would be a privilege to have that African American goddess at your table.
That is the funniest thing I've ever heard anyone say. That is so funny to me. Haley Williams, Brennan. I would want to GM Brennan and Abria. That would be fun. So C, Haley, Brennan, Abria, and I guess Matt. I gotta say Matt.
GM the GMs.
Yeah, no, seriously. And then it's C and Haley Williams. Or like these 2 people who are like. But that would be a chaotic table, and I would love it so much.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I was seeing how diverse that table was, but I'm like, okay, you got Haley Williams and Abria. That's 2 black folks.
That's so funny.
Y'all think I'm kidding? We took her.
It is a thing on TikTok. It's the black community has claimed Haley Williams.
He's ours now. Y'all can have Eminem and Logic, I guess. Whatever.
Not the and Logic. Oh, that's hilarious.
But
yeah.
I think that's about as good a place as any to start wrapping our show. This has been Morning Ritual, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been one of your hosts, Anita. You can find me everywhere at Panita or at Critical Misses. I'm a TTRPG streamer, graphic designer, producer, and cat mom about the space. And you can find me here for Morning Ritual. Our guest next week is Omnis X. And you can also find me here on Fridays for The Growing of the Dim, which is a horror anthology series. This time we're set in an eldritch western kind of horror beat that we've got going on. And they're discovering some weird things about the town of Palomino in Cimarron County. But you can also follow me on Twitter if you want to find things. Announcement for the channel. We are revamping our merch store. It is now available over on Noir's Fourth Wall store. So if you want to buy things, there's a couple new things up in that shop as well. We've got a collection there from Critical Misses that's got some improved quality, because Spring was also getting into NFTs and their quality was trash. So check it out. Buy things because we're poor. That's my plug. Noir.
Okay. It's my turn now. Hey, everybody. I'm Noir. You can find me all over the internet as TheNoirEnigma. That's Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Yes, please check out the merch store. We've got funny shirts. We've got a shirt that says consequences. Do with it what you will. You can find me tomorrow over on TTRPG. That's TEATRPG, where I will be playing with a fantastic cast. We've got we're playing a game of Ice Sword Prince. We're playing a game of Ice Sword Princess with a theme of The Wiz. So if you like the movie The Wiz, please check it out. It's being GM by Anita the Lesbian. We'll be playing with at Reliable Elliot, CJ Scholastic Dragon, Dare to Dream RPG, and of course me. It's black as fuck, and we not sorry about it. Also on Mondays, find me over on Cryptic Studios Twitch channel. Fun fact, we're taking another week off of Star Trek Perseverance. So I will be running a one shot this week for Star Trek Online. It's going to be fun. It's set in the Kelvin timeline. There'll be shenanigans. Check it out. Of course, every Friday you can find me over on Gen Con TV for Table Takes, where I report on the news. And finally, on Thursdays,
You unplugged your mic. Oh no.
How about now? I'm sorry about that. And finally, on Thursdays, you can find me over on Unmade Gaming's channel for our Lord of the Ring game, Shattered Crown, where I made the stupid decision to commit to wearing full armor every time we go live. So go ahead and see me sweat my ass off. But finally, let's get to the most important part. Connie, where can we find you? What you up to?
It's me, Connie! Hi everyone, I've been Connie, pronounced they, he, and she, guest on this stream. Such a wonderful interview. Thank you both so much for chatting with me. What a wonderful time and experience. Best way to wake up on a Saturday. Yeah. I am across the internet, TikTok and Twitter, namely, at by Connie Chang. That's BYCONNIECHANG. I am the GM and creative producer for Transplanar RPG, which I've been gushing about this entire interview. We're an all-trans, POC-led TTRPG show set in an original non-colonial anti-orientalist multiverse. We are in the middle of our hiatus content before the launch of our second main campaign in late June 2023. In the meantime, tune into part 2 of our very special The Beast Within 2-shot this coming Thursday. I believe that is March 23rd at 8:30 p.m. US Eastern Time on our Twitch channel at Transplanar RPG, and follow us on Twitter at Transplanar RPG for more announcements about hiatus content that's coming up, including God Killer related actual play content, including an official podcast and a one-shot miniseries featuring a bunch of really cool GMs, gods and God Killers in the community that I can't wait to share with all of you. And with that, I'll pass it back to the hosts.
Heck yeah.
That's been our show, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us today. We're going to go on a raid. We're going to go say hello to our friends over at Total Party Kiss. They're playing some Dungeons and Dragons, so we'll send some love over to those folks over there. Again, thank you all so much for stopping by and hanging out with us, but until next time, the ritual has concluded. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
All right, we're clear.